College football 2022. Quite a unique and creative way to open the show, right? That's all I got for you. It's the 22 season. We are less than 6 weeks away. We're just about 5 weeks away, and just about probably 4 weeks and a few days away from week 0. Of course, headlined by Illinois and Nebraska. Illinois and Nebraska. That was last year, Illinois and Nebraska. I've got a perfect prediction for that game. I can nail it. 30-22, Illinois pulls off the upset against a touchdown-favored Nebraska team. No, Nebraska and Northwestern will play in Dublin, Ireland on August 27th. We also have a Vandy-Hawaii game. So I'm very much looking forward to bookending my Saturday, August 27th here at the Voice of College Football with Nebraska Northwestern at noon from one side of the globe in Ireland. And then that night, it's about a 10:30 or 11 p.m. Eastern time kickoff, I believe, with Hawaii hosting Vanderbilt. So you SEC critics, detractors, haters of the SEC, you need to jump on that. You know why? If Vandy goes out to Hawaii and loses, which they probably will, 50-50 game, maybe, but long trip on the road. Vandy's been losing those kind of games out of conference for the last few years. Vandy loses that game, the SEC is 0-1 and 0-1 against a group of 5. So pounce on that. But welcome into the Voice of College Football. Best discussion, debate, and analysis of the game we all love each and every day with you. Best discussion, debate, and analysis. That's the mission. That's the aim. That's the goal. That's what we attempt to do. That is the mission. Do we hit it every day? No, we don't. But when we hit it because of your contribution. So we are taking your calls today right here at the Voice of College Football. I will leave the link in the chat. And we've got a small little crowd on the line right now. I think you guys are probably just waking up. It's probably beautiful outside where you are. It is here. So you'd rather be outside. I don't blame you. I would as well. And one day we will build the outdoor studio. There will either be a separate outdoor studio, or I've also envisioned either some type of sliding door or French doors to a deck, to a patio, and putting the entire set on rollers, and it would be on a track. Just roll inside, roll outside, inside, outside. Perfect. We will do that someday. Shop Amazon. When you do, I'm not encouraging you to shop on Amazon. That is your choice. But when you do, because you will and you do, more than half of you every month in this country, that astounds me. More than half of you, us, me included, more than half of us in America shop on Amazon, not like have ever shop on Amazon, every month. Place is worth $1.6 trillion. Send a few of those dollars to the Voice of College Football. Use the link in the description section down below. If you would like to write for us, where are the accompanying banners here? If you would like to write for us, hit me up at MarkRogersTV. I've got to sign up at voiceofcollegefootball.com. Yes, let's get it straight, Mark. For everything else, you can hit me up on Gmail, MarkRogersTV at Gmail. If you would like to write for us, go to voiceofcollegefootball.com. The Voice of College Football, but the site is voiceofcollegefootball.com. No the Ohio State University style there. Voiceofcollegefootball.com. Right on the top of the page, write for us. Okay, we will get to some more news and notes as we pass through the next couple hours with all of you. Let me get you the link. We've got our 24-hour college football opening weekend live marathon planned. We will announce the exact dates and times. What we did last year was on that Thursday night, the opening of college football after week 0. So not the exact opening of college football in week 0, but the recognized opening week 1, that Thursday night, with a couple really good games that night, Ohio State, Minnesota last year, and whomever else played. So we thought, okay, we'll probably do post game through about 2 a.m. So let's start at 2 a.m. We may rethink that. So anyway, 24 consecutive hours of live streaming here at the Voice of College Football on opening weekend. You'll see me for hopefully not 24 hours, or you may not see me because I may be on my head on the floor. But I made it through 19 to 20 hours of that. I got help for 4 to 5. But we will do the 24-hour marathon as well. One more thing before we dive into the football. I announced the other day that we're going to start, whether it be a full-flown show or just a segment, maybe on a weekly basis, called Accountability. Perfect name for it. I'll take you back about 20 years when I was first at ESPN. I most vividly recall the quarterback battle between, not the quarterback battle, the quarterback situation of the Dallas Cowboys and one Drew Henson. So Drew Henson, stud quarterback at Michigan, multi-sport athlete, played minor league baseball, I believe, and deciding on a career, all the talent in the world. And when he was entering the NFL, a lot of plays were made for him. It was a big story. Okay, this is about 2002 or 3. And so it was being reported by ESPN like every day in the discussions about Drew Henson was, and this is at a point where Tom Brady had, despite a very young career, had already established himself, big-time winner, probably had 2 Super Bowls at that point, 1 or 2. Of course, he won the first one in 2001, then the next one in 2003. But it was constantly being reported and discussed by these NFL reporters that Drew Henson was the starting quarterback over Tom Brady, and Brady was number 2. And I was like, why do we keep saying that? I would even talk to producers. I would, when I do that, that means I'm getting on the little phone system that we had in our ear that we were hooked up to with our headsets, and be like, producer Jim, why are you continuing to report and discuss Drew Henson being the starting quarterback at Michigan over Tom Brady? He was not. There was a quarterback battle. There was a time when Henson started a game or 2, but if you look over the entirety of the 1998 and 99 seasons at Michigan when Tom Brady was the starter, yes, he did not start every game both of those seasons. He missed a couple games. And there was a quarterback battle. There was a time early in the season in which they were playing both quarterbacks, but then Tom Brady won the job in 1998, won the job in 1999, and then the rest was history. He was not the backup quarterback to Drew Henson. So I thought, you know what? We should start a show. And I pitched this to somebody there. I said, we should start a show called Accountability. And we basically watch all of the studio programming on this network, and we review what everyone has to say, and we fact check. So I was fact checking way before Twitter and Facebook fake fact checks. Excuse me here. We may be off the air if I don't get this plugged in. So my idea was, let's start a show called Accountability, And we're not going to be mean-spirited. We're not going to be attacking people. And we understand that people make errors. I do it all the time here. I misspeak. Most of it's me misspeaking. What was the thing that I said the other day that I clearly know about, but I just said Illinois instead of Indiana? But it was a typo of the mouth. That happens. That happens to everybody. It happens to me a lot. So those are understandable. But we're talking about reporting incorrectly, inaccurately. And I thought we should start a show called Accountability. And we would go through we would have screeners go through every studio show, NFL Live, College Football Live, PTI, every studio show. And they would fact check and they would say, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. There's a ton of stuff. I started taking notes on everything I caught that was wrong, reported incorrectly, inaccurate, wrong. I'm not talking about bad opinions. I'm talking about facts. So it hit me a couple weeks ago. I see this stuff. Now we've got the social media component. So I don't even watch that stuff anymore. So who knows what's being said on those shows that's incorrect. I'm sure it's spewed out by the day. And most of those folks are extremely good at what they do. And again, people misspeak at times. So I'm not talking about that. But now I see social media posts every day that I'm like, oh my word, that's either just blatantly wrong, that's inaccurate, that is a fake fact, that is not right, it's not correct, it's not truth, or that is such an illogical opinion that it can easily be shot down. Like there are opinions and then there are opinions. You know, we can have an opinion on the greatest quarterback in NFL history, and we can talk about a dozen or 15 guys. But if somebody's going to make a list and say that Paul McDonald's the greatest quarterback in NFL history, okay, that is so insanely ridiculous and ludicrous that should be shot down. Because even though it's an opinion, that is clearly not even in the realm of discussion. It's absurd. So we'll figure that out, whether that's a weekly show, weekly segment, or just periodically. I think without being mean-spirited, without being too critical and understanding that people make mistakes and showing some grace, still, we need to hold people accountable. And you at the same time can hold me accountable. Absolutely. So we are dropping the link in the live chat. And you guys can let me know what you think of that idea. It seemed to catch a lot of people in the right spot. You guys seem to be all for that. And yes, folks, I will have a set again one day. That will happen. I will have a set here at some point soon. Appreciate all of you being here at the Voice of College Football. And again, if you would like to write for us, go to voiceofcollegefootball.com and go to the top of the screen where it says write for us. And you click on that and you'll be in contact with me. Tukey G, good to see you. Powcar1, always good to see you. Thanks for your support. Ferris gets it grammatically correct. That's good to see. Let me run down a couple more comments, then we'll get to our first call. Michigan Rick, Hunter's here. Jason, can't say hi to everyone, though I would like to. Gotta recognize this guy, though. We got, we got Logan Robinson stopping in for a quick hi here. It's Fall Camp Week in Tallahassee. Let's go. That's right. So, Florida State Live, folks, 6 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday, unless we got to switch up the times, but we hit it about 99% of the time. Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time on the Florida State channel. Get on over there. Every Wednesday, Florida State plays Duquesne in week 0. So Florida State, a week 0 team. So they are starting fall camp, much like Northwestern Nebraska would be starting this week as well. and which leads me into Big Ten Media Days as well. They are going on Tuesday and Wednesday. I had a thought about being live during Big Ten Media Days that will be on the Big Ten Network from roughly 11 to 2 on Tuesday and Wednesday. But then I thought, okay, well, if we are on at the same time at Big Ten Media Days, then I can't watch Big Ten Media Days. So we'll think about that. And also, we've got a number of fall camp live preview shows coming your way. 1 hour minimum fall camp live previews coming up. Notre Dame, Clemson, LSU, Texas A&M starting us off. Texas A&M scheduled Tuesday at noon Eastern time. Tomorrow, Tuesday at noon Eastern time right here. Let's get to our first call. I believe we got Hunter on the line. Hunter, what's going on?
Good morning, Mark. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Had the day off today, so
Nice.
so it's always a good day. I finally did it this morning, Mark. I put down one of my college football bets. I bet on Utah to beat Florida. I I really think that's going to be the game. For me, that's one of the most exciting games this year, and I know I've said that in other call-ins, but I think that's going to be a real good game to watch.
So did you bet that against the line, or was that the money line selection for you?
No, against the line, it was -2, 2.5 for Utah's favorite.
Okay. So you've got to cover the 2.5.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh, they got. Here's the thing that makes me think they have a lot of their starters are returning this year.
Sure.
So I think combined with them doing last year, and I think they'll be a better team. I think they could potentially win the Pac-12.
Well, sure they could. They're Utah. They won the Pac-12 last year. They've got a returning starting quarterback and a pretty high level of offensive production coming back. And they've got USC and Oregon, most notably, to contend with. But no, I would not be surprised if Utah won. However, I also would not be surprised if we had a fairly low-scoring game in Gainesville. Therefore, you just don't be surprised if you're right on your Utah pick, but they're kicking a late field goal to win like 24-22.
Yeah, that could be that could be a possibility. Um, and also, prayers out to John Mechie. I don't know if you heard the news about John Mechie, but he has leukemia.
I did not see that.
Yeah, the Houston Texans released a statement yesterday
Wow.
about it, and then he released a statement. I believe it was this morning or yesterday afternoon that he has leukemia. So prayers out to John Mechie for he's not going to be able to play this year. He says so. Hopefully he recovers quickly.
Yeah, that is terrible news. But now what we can do is obviously support him and send our prayers his way and believe for the best.
Yeah. So another team that I rarely talk about, but I think are interesting team to me this year, um, is Indiana. Um, I really like Indiana's head coach. Um, I just wonder how they will fare this year. A matchup that's interesting to me is them versus Nebraska this year. I think that could be an interesting matchup this year between them two.
Wow. You were the first one and will probably be the last one to call in, especially from SEC country, and peg the Indiana Nebraska game as an interesting matchup. But I agree with you. It's an interesting matchup, and Indiana is an intriguing team. Uh, I think that they are one of the teams in the Big Ten that is the most difficult to predict where they will stack up this year, much like Florida in the SEC. Now, those teams are on different levels. Florida's a better team, more talent. But I've got a pretty good read, I believe, on most teams in the country, but I'll put Indiana in that category with Connor Baslett coming in from Missouri as starting quarterback, but he still has to win the job. Jack Tuttle, transferred from Utah, former four-star quarterback, is in the quarterback battle there as well at Indiana. How deep into the season are you going to find that Indiana-Nebraska game?
Well, I have a friend of mine that's a big Nebraska fan, so we were just talking about. He's always crazy optimistic about Nebraska, and I had mentioned to him that that's one of the games that I think that Scott Frost needs to win this year.
Well, Hunter, those Nebraska fans have to do that to keep their sanity. They have to be just delusionally optimistic. Otherwise, they would be depressed.
Yeah, and it's so unfortunate because they are one of those teams that are one of the historic greats, and it's just sad to see the state of the program in which it's in, or has been.
I have to think that this move to the Big Ten, you could go with one school of thought would be just that the timing is coincidental, that the program was going to hit the skids anyway, and just moving to the Big Ten is just a matter of them being in a different conference. Or you could subscribe to the thought that moving to the Big Ten adversely affected Nebraska. And I think there's a little truth to both, but mostly the latter hurt their recruiting deep in the Midwest into Oklahoma and Texas.
And those are two hard states to compete with as far as recruiting, because Texas, you've got Alabama's always in there. Texas is, of course, is in there, and A&M's always in that state. So it's a hard place for them to recruit, Texas specifically. And there's just not a whole lot of when you think of the states that have good college football, high school prospects come out of, Nebraska's not a state that you think of.
No.
So
reason you shouldn't think of Nebraska. Nebraska typically has 2 or 3 4-stars. That's it.
Yeah. And those guys usually end up going to Nebraska anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a big talent pool. So I like some of the things that that Nebraska's done on the recruiting control the last 2 years. They pulled out a wide receiver from out of Florida, 4-star receiver. Can't think of the kid's name right now, but they sometimes are able to get guys out of states that you would think that other teams in that state, would be able to pull away from.
Well, what they've been able to do here in the last recruiting cycle, and when I say the last one, I mean 22, but also going into 23, and obviously we're a year and a half away from seeing those guys, but is that they pulled the wide receiver coach out of Louisiana, Mickey Joseph, and he has pulled some Louisiana prospects up to Nebraska, some good ones.
Yeah, and I think then Scott Frost had to change his coaching staff this past year, going into this year, because it was just atrocious what they were going into. And there's always this. I love Nebraska's fan base because, like you said, they have to be overly optimistic to keep their sanity. But at least they're not one of these teams that. One of these fan bases that they have a very enthusiastic fan base, win or lose or draw.
They sure do.
And that's what you have to kind of respect about Nebraska.
Most loyal fan base in college football, Nebraska, Tennessee, and I don't know where else to go after that, because those are the 2 places that I see fill their stadiums regardless of the results, regardless of the record. And I can't say that about anyone else. Like, I don't know if Ohio State fans are that loyal because they're always good. So Yeah, we see even places like Florida State and Miami, of course. Well, Miami has difficulty drawing anyway.
I would put Florida State in that category.
I would I would have to look at the numbers, and I'm just attendance doesn't tell us everything, but I think Florida State's had some pretty sparsely attended games in the last 5 years.
One of my favorite games, college football games that I was ever got to attend was one year. It was the Florida State and Notre Dame game, and Florida State ended up beating them that game. Can't remember exactly what year it was, but that was a real lively game to be at. To see, I mean, I live about 2 hours from Tallahassee, so
Would that have been in 2013? Was that when Notre Dame got called for a pick play at the goal line?
Yes, yeah, yeah. That was a good game. Let me ask you. I don't know the answer to this question. Maybe you can answer it for me. Why is Nebraska playing Northwestern in Dublin, Ireland?
Nebraska was scheduled to play Illinois in somewhere in it might have been Dublin, Ireland. I'm sure it was. Maybe it was in England last year, just to promote the sport, much like the NFL does. And Notre Dame did it a number of times, and then I thought I think that the thought process was, well, there's a connection between Notre Dame being a global brand, plus also obviously the Fighting Irish, and then them playing. They play Boston College over there, I know, and one or two other games, and that they would just spread the wealth, and I'm sure the Big Ten was all for it, of course, and that's what you've got. Promote the sport.
Yeah, I mean, that was a weird place. I mean, if you would have asked me, where's another country you think the college football will be played at? Dublin, Ireland was not the first one to roll off the top of my head. So, I mean, I'm just more curious as to why that was going to be played there.
Yeah, that was the call, to promote the sport, and obviously you're going to do that the first week of the season, or week 0, so that you get the players back and they can take a week off, not a week off, but a week off of games to get adjusted.
Let me see if you agree with this. To me, one of the most underrated programs right now in college football is Kentucky.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that.
I look at what they have done the last 2 years and go, they have consistently improved year over year in the past, I'd say 4 years. It might not always be in win record, although that's been the case the last 2 years, but year over year, I've seen improvement from them, and they've always been able to put out good. They've always had a good offensive line, and they've recruited pretty good at that position too. When you consider what Kentucky is.
Yeah, they've recruited and developed on all 3 levels of the defense. All you have to do is look at their NFL draft selections over the last 4 to 5 years, and then offensive line as well. I ranked Kentucky. I released program rankings this last offseason, and I put Kentucky around 13 or 14. And a lot of people thought I was nuts.
I don't think you're nuts at all. I think that they are. They got a good quarterback this year.
Yep.
Coming in this season, who was that? The black quarterback they had a few years ago.
Terry Wilson.
I really liked him. I enjoyed watching him play. He might not have been the most talented, but I liked watching him play.
He was pretty talented running the ball. It was a little painful to watch him try to throw it.
He reminds me of Jalen Hurts his first year at Alabama a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that.
Jalen came in, and I'll tell you what, in all of college football, I don't think you could have wrote an any better story than what happened between Jalen Hurts and Tua. And that'll be one of my favorite. That's probably my favorite college football story, because if you couldn't write that,
No,
what happened between them two,
you're right.
and to see that even Jalen went to Oklahoma, and
Yeah.
now of course is in the NFL, he's still, you see him all the time in press interviews wearing Alabama gear, and sometimes he'll wear Oklahoma gear. But wow, what a story.
It is
And I was
incredible.
proud of both of them because how they handled it.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts could have easily, and you know how painful it was for you to watch, have won a national championship in 2016. When he walked off the field, he didn't have the best of games. But when it came down to it, when they needed 2 fourth quarter touchdown drives, he pulled it off. They scored the last 2 times they had the ball, 2 touchdown drives for Alabama. And when he walked off the field, they were leading. So he didn't lose the game, and then he didn't get a chance. So he could have had a national championship ring. We know what happened the next year. Tua comes in and delivers, and then just to see what happened then at the 2018 SEC championship game, Tua goes down, Jalen Hurts comes in, brings them back from a 2-touchdown deficit. They make a remarkable comeback, and then he goes to Oklahoma, almost wins the Heisman Trophy. I would have never guessed that Jalen Hurts would be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
And you know what, Mark? I wasn't mad when he left to go to Oklahoma. I was happy to see him do well at Oklahoma. I really was.
Yeah.
Because I knew the kind of kid that he is, or he was. Of course, he's in the NFL now, but to see that, wow, yeah, it's just one of those things. You know, you can put all of the championships aside and all that aside for a second, and go just look at the kids. The kids' drive of how he. Such a good competitor of being able to do that. And you watch Tua on the sideline was just as happy as him winning that game for them as he would have been if he wouldn't have got hurt that game. So, yeah, I'm a little partial because I'm an Alabama fan, but at the same time, I think anybody, regardless of who you root for, has to look at that whole how that all played out and go, wow.
Absolutely, Hunter.
All right, Mark. Well, I'm gonna get off here, and I appreciate you taking my call.
Absolutely. And one final note to extend our Nebraska-Louisiana conversation, just to back up my point about them recruiting in Louisiana. 2023, their top 2 commits right now from the state of Louisiana.
I don't know if you got it pulled up on your computer. Was it last cycle or this the cycle before that they got a kid out of Florida, I believe, who's a 4-star wide receiver? Or maybe it was Louisiana. Maybe I do have that mixed up. But I thought there was one kid from Florida.
So their top player that just committed a couple of weeks ago for the 23 class is Omarion Miller from Louisiana, wide receiver.
What about 2022?
Okay. 2022. New Jersey, Georgia, Louisiana, Illinois. No players from Florida at the top of the board.
Okay, maybe I got that. Maybe I just got the states wrong.
Well, they did get a good receiver from Florida, Victor Jones Jr. out of Orlando, Florida, but he is a 3-star and was only ranked 97th at his position.
Okay. I just got the states mixed up, I guess, with that one. But my point was that I'm sorry, I did get the states first. It is this class. It was last year's class, and it was 4-star wide receiver Jerrion Bonner out of Ellenwood, Georgia. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I got the states mixed up. But I mean, that's still a big get for them to come out of the state of Georgia to get that kid.
Sure.
So, all right, Mark, appreciate it.
Have a good day. All right, now we go to Who do we have here? WDBSN Buckeye. It's a lot of letters there. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. What's up?
Nothing. I just joined the show because I saw a bunch of people talk. I'm pretty sure I saw one guy in chat talking about need some Buckeye insiders, so I was like, I'll do that.
All right. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
What do you got for us today?
Honestly, nothing much. Just counting down the doomsday to California coming here.
You don't like that?
I mean, yeah. Like at this point, college football is becoming a cash grab.
Sure.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I see a lot of fans over here talking about how this is not, this makes no sense and stuff.
Makes no sense
To
geographically.
a lot of people, only
what
from
we're
a
talking
business
about?
perspective.
From a business perspective, it doesn't make any sense?
It makes sense from
Oh, yeah.
business. Everything else, it doesn't.
Yeah. Geographically, it doesn't make any sense.
Like, honestly, this is just to lure Notre Dame here, but it won't work. Notre Dame's going to wait out.
Yeah, I don't know what Notre Dame exactly is waiting for. If they obviously want to stay independent.
Yep.
And then I'll retract my previous statement. They're waiting to see what the TV landscape's going to look like with them as independent is what they're looking at.
Whenever the NBC contract's up, that's when they'll strike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they can stay in the range of the TV revenue brought in by the big conferences, then they will stay independent. But if they get what a lot of us would like to see happen is that they get frozen out by the large conferences and they are forced to join a conference.
Yep. Like all this is the breakaway from the NCAA.
Yeah, we're also headed in that direction where they're losing their power and there's going to be a break. Yes.
Yeah. Like I bet that's gonna be whoever leaves. Like it's gonna be 64 teams, either or is everyone gonna break away? Like every FBS and FCS school is going to try and break away.
Well, I would see it this way, that if there's some type of initiative to organize and become one entity, then we could see the Wake Forest of the world be saved and be included because they're valuable for a lot of different reasons to the whole. But if it just continues to be a money grab by the Big Ten and the SEC and the Big 12 just trying to survive by grabbing what it can, then you're going to see those type of schools get left behind. That's how I see it, because the Big Ten and the SEC are moving based on 2 or 3 factors. One is that they are trying to match each other. So if the SEC would go off and sign Clemson, Miami, and Florida State and North Carolina to make it an even 4, let's say, then we could expect the Big Ten to then put the pressure on Notre Dame or go the route of Oregon, Washington, who of course have applied to and want to join the Big Ten, or vice versa. The Big Ten gets Notre Dame and Stanford, or Notre Dame, Washington, Oregon, Stanford, or something like that, that the SEC would counter and start to pick away at the ACC. But if that doesn't happen, let's say Notre Dame says no to the Big Ten and things settle down where they currently are, I think they could settle down, because as long as there's not a counter punch response to where they're trying to match each other and they're comfortable where they are, they're just going to look at the field. The Big Ten, the SEC, they're going to look at the field and they're going to evaluate each school and its potential to make them money and be a benefit to them. And as long as they're not a benefit, and we're getting to that point where there are no schools that are going to be a financial benefit to either conference, then they're just going to say, it's not. See, we look at it as football fans saying, why doesn't the Big Ten just grab them and them and them and them, and the SEC grab them and them and them and them? But they're looking at the academics, the academic endowment, the financial situation concerning the market size and the TV ratings and all that brings, plus the football. And if that school is not a benefit, then they're not going to expand just to expand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's pretty much all I can really talk about. Like, I'm just.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you being here.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Hey, Sue. Sue likes Utah to beat Florida. So a few other things on the ledger. Again, I mentioned Big Ten Media Days, and my thought was to go live during Big Ten Media Days from about 11 to 2 the next 2 days. However, I then thought, if we're talking here, then we can't watch Big Ten Media Days. So I think I'll take in Big Ten Media Days, and we'll be reporting my thoughts, whether that be live or posting segments, as I did with the ACC and the ACC commissioner, Mike Norvell, Dabo Sweeney. I wanted to do more, but that's what we went with the ACC. We'll do the same with the Big Ten. I will watch the entirety of the Big Ten, at least the coverage on television. I don't know if I'm going to have time to delve into every side interview, and I'll check out all the coaches at the podium, and we will have our thoughts. Thank you for everyone who watched and had a positive response to our post the other day from Jim Phillips' comments at the ACC kickoff, and received a lot of positive comments concerning our response there. And this morning we posted the Big Ten TV ratings look. I broke down the 2019 and 2021 viewership of Big Ten football. And if we get a positive response there, I will break down the SEC. And I think that will be even more fun to compare the SEC and the Big Ten. R.W. Tyndall, appreciate you being here. Celebrating his 21 Big Ten championship. And that's what counts right now. That is what counts right now. And RW, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your many comments to the channel. Michigan Rick, appreciate you being here as well with the Block M. And Michigan Rick, you showed extreme class a couple weeks ago, or at whatever point we first interacted, when I thought I couldn't make out your Michigan Rick, and I thought you were canceling the M out, as is done in that state below Michigan. What state is that? The state below Michigan. That awful state below Michigan. Man, I'm going to have Buckeye fans all over me for saying that. Just trying to poke the bear a little bit. But I have to side with our Michigan fans once in a while. The Michigan fans might be my largest fan base here at the Voice of College Football. I think it's close between Ohio State and Michigan. And Miami, of course. Miami's the most supportive. I will say that. Okay, Canes 1989. Mark, do you think FAMU has a chance to beat North Carolina this season? Well, FIU beat Miami a couple of years ago. And FAMU, well, they got blown out against Florida last year. I don't know that they have anything on record outside of when Lane Kiffin was there of ever challenging anyone, especially Is that a week 1 game? If it's a week 1 game, I would give them a higher possibility. You know, you're looking up the real football schools when you can just put in Alabama 2022 schedule and it comes up football, 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 football. If you put in Stanford 2022 schedule, you get all these academic calendars. You have to put in football. Same thing with UNC. So I guess a credit to UNC. It's a fine school. That is week 1. No, that is when is no. That's Florida A&M. Okay, Florida A&M, not Florida Atlantic. That's not FAMU. That's Florida A&M. That's a completely different deal. No, Florida A&M is not going to beat North Carolina. Not that I've got a great scouting report on the Rattlers. The Rattlers of Florida A&M are responsible for Kenny Guyton being in the Ohio State record books with 7 touchdown passes. Ohio State won that game like 76-0. 2013, something in that range. Mike says, I don't know about Ryan Day on the hot seat. He lost like 2 to 3 games in 3 years. Even they lost to Michigan again. I think he gets another season. Yeah. Ryan Day is not on a hot seat. They have the number 1 recruiting class in the country. They had a down year and won the Rose Bowl. Yes. If Ryan Day goes 9-3 this year and loses to Michigan, hear me out. Unless the score's 42-3, he will be the head coach at Ohio State in 2023. He's going to have a top 5 recruiting class and 1 bad, in quotes, bad season. Yeah, he's not on the hot seat. Then we can start talking hot seat from there. All right, the link. The link is in the live chat if you would like to join us. Edward O, Les Miles or Shremo, Boat ain't the coach anymore. You won't get any close games handed to you anymore. Must be in the middle of a conversation going back and forth there. Michael, so what you do is we have transitioned from the call-in line to just going through the link, because those people that would like to be on camera can be on camera, number 1. And number 2, the audio quality is much better, much improved than going over the phone lines. And also number 3, it doesn't cost anything. So it used to cost us somewhere in the range of $12 to $15 per show. So we are now going with the StreamYard link, which I've left in the live chat 4 or 5 times. Yeah, there's RW Tyndall again. RW not on the hot seat. Could I be wrong? Yes, I could be wrong. People could flip out if they lost to Michigan again and they went 9-3. But he's not on the hot seat right now. If they lose to Michigan, yeah, there you go. Okay, if I'm reading your question now correctly, RW, I say that Ryan Day is on the hot seat if they lose to Michigan. But also, let's put it in context within the rest of the season. If they lose to Michigan in the scenario in which Steve Dace lays out, so go check out his predictions, but it's an Ohio State loss to Michigan, but still making the playoffs at 11-1. No, he's not on the hot seat. Tim really wants to move that 1 p.m. Pacific time slot for the USC show. We'll see what we can do there. I don't know if that's possible. I'll check with Matt. We'll see what we can do there. We've got a USC show every Tuesday, folks, every Tuesday at 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific. And hope that everyone that's watching me right now, which is plus 100, and then a few thousand, know that we've got team channels. We've got tons of team channels, too many for me to list right now. But we have team-specific live streams as well. On Tuesday, USC, Iowa, and Nebraska. On Wednesday, Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State, and Miami. On Thursday, Miami. On Friday, Oklahoma and West Virginia. So get on over to those channels. Mike 3883, I think ratings would get more views than viewers for that type of video. We can make that change. I'll give it a shot. You may be right. Thanks, RW. Appreciate that. 100,000 subs. Thanks to all of you. Let's work on 100,000 here on the main channel. That would be great. So as many of you know that I've been in the process of moving, and there's all sorts of other things involved that are taking up my time besides the move. So my goal is to post one strong, solid video on this main channel every day. And I've not done that recently because I don't want it to be a Tennessee video or a LSU video, nothing against those schools, but I don't want them to be team specific necessarily. I want them to be more nationally based videos on this channel, on the main channel. And then if you're an LSU fan, please subscribe to our LSU channel, Florida, Miami, whomever, get over there. And we churn out the daily beat, the recruiting, the conversation regarding the daily beat on those specific channels. And once again, we are opening fall camp with live streams featuring, at this point, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Clemson, and LSU. And we will do more. We had a Purdue request from our guy Michael the other day, but he was going to get me some Purdue media to bring on, but I've not seen that that message come through yet. Speaking of the Irish, we got our guy Will here.
What's going on, Mark?
Not too much. How you doing?
Why did Hunter have to bring back that awful Notre Dame Florida State game from 2014? Post-traumatic stress disorder just kicked in when he heard that terrible call that referee made.
Yeah, it was a call that didn't need to be made.
Mm-hmm. That just, yeah. And unfortunately, the season just fell apart in 2014.
Sure did.
Although we did beat LSU in the Music City Bowl that year.
6-0 to 7-5, if I recall.
Yeah. Oh, man. Mark, what do you think about the Penn State players unionizing? They're trying to make a players union at Penn State.
Well, I thought that so I haven't looked into it. So the Northwestern push to do this years ago had much to do with medical care. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing that they're going that route because we're in the midst of NIL. I would think that any of these players can make money. Mm-hmm. So is it medically related? Do we know?
I mean, I do think that the union would be good for players that aren't as, like the kickers or the punters, that maybe they could make sure that they're being treated properly. So I'm happy for them, but
they're being treated properly by whom? How are they not being treated properly?
Or like, I don't know, I guess maybe they get like a piece of NIL or.
So like, I'm not going to be able to say, make fun of kickers and say that they're not real football players. Is that how they're not being treated?
I mean, maybe that's part of it, but I just think like with all these conference deals, I can understand. Like, I'm not totally against it, but it seems like you definitely are against it.
Well, Well, no. I don't want to be totally against it without being educated. I don't just spew opinions when I don't know all the facts. So I don't know all the facts. I would just warn them to be educated that if you want to be professionals, then there are drawbacks to being professionals as well. Do you want to be cut? So if players want to get cut and then the scholarship goes and it all goes like that, okay,
Mhm.
then there can be cuts during the season. We didn't like your 3 dropped passes last game. You're gone. We didn't like you. Like, do these kickers want to be treated like NFL kickers? There's about 15 NFL kickers that are safe because they're so good. And then the other half of the league, these guys switch places, every 3 weeks, because if they miss a field goal, see ya. You got to hit like 85% of your field goals to be any good. So bye. You missed a 48-yarder. We lost the game. Bye. You're cut the next day. Do these players, if they want to be, your scholarship, we cut you, therefore your scholarship's null and void today, on Sunday after you drop 3 passes on Saturday night.
Well, do you think this brings up another point that I just thought of? Do you think this
They want
would
to be
be?
treated like adults and professionals. It goes both ways.
Yeah, that's true. But do you think it would be good for the smaller schools? Like, if someone gets cut, then they can get picked up by by like a group of 5, or maybe like a Duke or a Vanderbilt, so they can get their scraps, and then maybe those programs can compete better because they get like a 4-star wide receiver that had one bad game.
Well, that can happen today. If the player initiates the transfer, of course, they can do that pretty much at any time.
Well, I was thinking, like, if they get cut, then they could just hop over to a different school.
Sure.
If they have a scholarship.
Sure. That would work the same way. But that school would have to have a roster spot available for them. So they'd have to cut somebody else.
Oh, yeah, that would make it real interesting. Mark, do you think that with I feel like there's more FCS upsets going on? I could be wrong by that, but do you think there could be like more FCS beating Power 5 upsets this year?
Why do you think that's going to happen?
Well, I feel like Northern Arizona beat Arizona, and then Jacksonville State beat Florida State. I feel like it's starting to happen.
So you're not just predicting it, you think that it's happened more recently.
Yeah.
It seems like it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't back that up. Of course, we're going to think about the games that stand out or the games that they lost. Can we think of any other FCS games from last year? So we did have those 2. But then again, Arizona, my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, Jetfish is putting the team in the
high
right
school teams last year.
They weren't very good.
I can't think of any other FCS teams that beat anybody in the Power 5. And so let's look at it this way, that if there are 65 Power 5 teams and I'd say 50 of them played an FCS team, then they probably went 48-2 against the FCS.
I mean, it's still pretty lopsided, but like, do you think it could like start to happen 2 times a year, or do you think that's just more of an anomaly?
Well, it's going to happen if places like Jackson State continue to get some top recruits.
Oh yeah, that's true.
There was Jackson State with 2 of the top, with Travis Hunter, and then the other player, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, the wide receiver, who was a top 5 to 10 wide receiver in the country. And then there was another SWAC school that got a top 50 player in last year's recruiting class. Now, it's football. You need a bunch of those guys, but still, those guys are going to attract more.
Do you think that conferences like the SWAC and the MEAC, if this continues going on with like more money into those schools, do you think they could eventually become like group of 5 conferences, or like maybe even in like 30 Power 5 conference?
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen all sorts of schools that had less draw to them be able to elevate to FBS schools in the last 15 years. South Alabama, James Madison, Georgia Southern, Georgia State, etc.
Another thing that I'm thinking of is, I think we need to, like, would you be for like some like group of 5 schools that were awful, like UMass and UConn being relegated, and then like the teams that do well in the playoffs be promoted? Like maybe like, or are you totally against that?
What I would like to have answered, and I've not thought of this until you just asked that question, is there's so much conversation about Notre Dame's TV contract being an independent.
Mm-hmm.
What are we down to now? We're down to UMass, New Mexico State, Notre Dame, and Liberty joined a conference, right? They joined the Sun Belt.
Mm-hmm.
So we're down to like 3 schools, and Notre Dame's on one completely different end of the spectrum with the, top of 5 elites. And then like, what does UMass do when we talk about TV contracts? So if you go to the Sun Belt Conference, you're at least protected by their television contract with ESPN, and most of those games are on ESPN Plus or whatever, but still they make money. But UMass, where are their games? I know they play on TV and play on digital.
I feel like they'll be on like regional sports networks like NESN.
Yeah, so they're signing like
Comcast.
I can't imagine that NESN is paying that much money to the University of Massachusetts. It might be a barter deal practically. The UMass just wants their games on regional TV. So I would think that they would want to get into a conference.
Yeah. But who would take them? Like the American? Because like I feel like most group of 5 conferences, or I guess Conference USA, American or Conference USA.
Yeah, I don't know what we're talking Big Ten and SEC, and them looking at the field and thinking, does this school bring value at our level? So when an American conference or Conference USA looks at UMass, I don't know what that gets them.
I mean, I guess the TV market, but are they that popular in Massachusetts? I don't think so.
We could have a debate as to whether BC is that popular in Massachusetts.
Ooh.
Really? I'm not saying that to dog on BC. I'm just speaking the truth.
Yeah. Do you
People
think
don't
that
go to the games? From what I understand, it's a pro sports town.
Yeah, but it wasn't before Tom Brady got there, was it? Like as much? I guess before Bill Parcells got there. Or BC like a bigger market? Like I wouldn't remember. I'm not that. I wouldn't be able to remember that, but.
Well, they obviously have a big time football program for a reason. They're able to recruit well enough and develop well enough to be decent, to be 6 or 7 win decent on a regular basis and draw from that ACC money. We could, if we went into Boston College's TV ratings, I don't know that they would really tell us that much, because I think they would be riding off of the team that they're playing most of the time. And we'd have to delve deep into what is the Boston market's share of Boston College viewership. I don't have that answer, but I'm guessing it's not comparable to, forget the Patriots. It's not comparable to the Bruins or the Celtics or the Red Sox.
Yeah. That would be fun to like bring in someone that would know about that, but I didn't know who that would be. For like a video on Patreon, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know if it's readily available, but there are ways to break that down. That information is out there somewhere, but it's so obscure. I don't even know if it's online. You can look up Alabama's TV ratings in Birmingham and Tuscaloosa. Those things get reported from time to time because people want to know. But I don't know if we could find that. Boston College's local TV ratings. I'd be fascinated to know that. Somebody wrote an article on SI in the fall of 2020. The time is now for Boston College football to seize bigger audience.
Ooh, okay.
It's an opportunity that doesn't come around often, but Jeff Hafley has BC primed to be a bigger force in the local market.
Jeff Hafley is a good coach.
Well, I think he's a good coach, yeah. He is a good coach. The Red Sox, they're talking about local market ratings. Could be in this article somewhere. Maybe not. Got to the end of the article. So anyway, yes, Boston College in Boston. Didn't know that we would take it in that direction.
Another one I would be interested in is because I was talking to Jordan.
Yeah.
This was a few days ago on the Discord, and he said that South Carolina, there's more South Carolina fans than Clemson fans. So it'd be interesting to see those TV ratings compared to as well, because if South Carolina really does have more fans, they might have a bigger share.
If South Carolina was good, that would be interesting to note because, again, you have a lot of non-fans watching these games. So you can't really compare a Clemson-Georgia game to a South Carolina-Georgia game in recent years because the Clemson-Georgia game draws people like us just to watch the game. The South Carolina-Georgia game doesn't draw too many other fans outside of those two fan bases because South Carolina's 4-8 and Georgia's a 25-point favorite.
Well, maybe one way to do this, this could possibly work, is if they're playing like a group or 5 or an FCS school to see. Maybe that would be.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And for Crisco's Country Life question, I think Brian Kelly will be about 8-5, maybe 9-3 most years at LSU. Like maybe if they have a generational quarterback, they can compete with Alabama. But I don't know. I just don't think Brian Kelly's at that Nick Saban or Jimbo Fisher level.
Well, I will say this, that LSU's basically been going 8-4 or 9-3 every year since they went to the 2011 BCS championship game, excluding the 1 year off the charts.
Mm-hmm.
But they've always been better than that on paper. The recruiting rankings tell us that they should be better. So if Brian Kelly is who I think he is, he should be able to take that recruiting ranking and develop players and scheme a game way beyond Ed Ogeron, Les Miles level, and should do better.
I don't know. I mean, possibly, but I feel like the SEC has also gotten better since 2011. Like Ole Miss is much better. A&M's good. Like I feel like this past season was what Les Miles would have gotten an average season. Just because I feel like, I don't like the SEC, but I feel like they've gotten better coaches at all the schools.
All right. I'd have to really go through each situation to back that one up. I can't really argue or defend that one. 2011 SEC was pretty dominant. They had both participants in the BCS championship game.
I feel like Kentucky wasn't that as good. Ole Miss wasn't as good. Mississippi State maybe would have started good going with Dan Mullen under that time, but
in that range, Florida was better.
Yeah,
LSU was better. Auburn was better.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe BK could do better than that, but Like, I've just been through so much Brian Kelly post-traumatic stress disorder over these past couple of years in these big games that maybe my mind might be too warped.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. And you've got hope with Marcus Freeman, but he, of course, has yet to prove that he's going to do any better.
Yeah.
It'll be fascinating if we could fast forward 5 years right this second and see that Marcus Freeman went 11-1, 11-1, 10-2, 12-0, 11-1. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Or 9-3, 9-3, 8-4, 9-3. Okay.
I don't know if I could show my face. I might have to go faceless if that's happens. I might have to turn off my face cam. If that's the case. I don't know.
So your expectation of Marcus Freeman is to win 10 or 11 games most seasons and compete for the playoffs.
Just one national championship in the next 5 years. That's all I really want.
Okay. You would take a lot of nosedives. You would take a lot of LSU nosedives, Auburn nosedives for a national championship.
Probably. If you had to put a bullet gun to my head, I would probably say that.
Well, based on the ridicule that Notre Dame fans take that I see, and on this channel in particular, I would opt for that. If that's your incentive, but you can always say, we wanted, when people say, hey, you won 6-6 this year, we won a national championship 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. Versus going 11-1 and losing in the playoffs and losing by 3 touchdowns, and people are just going to continue to look at you the same way. Yeah.
All right.
I don't agree with that, but I totally understand it. Like, based on people's perceptions and what they look at national championships, I totally get it. The fan that I am would rather have my team in the running every year because I don't value national championships quite to the extent that most people do.
Yeah. All right, Mark. Well, I gotta go get back to work.
All right, Will.
I might have gone through my break time a bit, but
Thanks for checking in.
it'll be a fun rest of the show.
Absolutely.
Leave a like. All right.
All right. Our guy Will checking in. And I would guess that most of you that root for those types of teams, Notre Dame is a prime example. Michigan's a prime example. Georgia was a prime example before last season, would take the national championship in the next 5 years and a bunch of 6-6 seasons with it in place of 11-1 every year, winning conference championships at times, going to the playoffs and losing. Consistent contention. You would take LSU last 7 or 8 years over Oklahoma last 20 years. All right. Got our guy Yakov showing up here.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mark. I'm like our previous call. I'm gonna work from home. I'm gonna take a little break here. Just clocked out, and thought I would call you. And I actually, first of all, Mark, I feel like I need to maybe redeem myself. Last time, if you remember, I called. It was a little more on the silly side when I was giving you some suggestions about possible openings to your show with you, coming through the halls of your home, like you're walking through the Nebraska tunnels. I hope that. Hopefully you took that well. I don't.
Sure.
Okay, good.
That's great.
Well, so maybe I don't need to be that much
over here. Absolutely.
And I also, sorry, Mark, I missed. Normally I like to super chat in on the Buckeye show. I was not able to make it last time, but I did. If you haven't known, I did watch it and I pushed like. So I hope I contributed in that form.
I never question your support. Yeah, go on.
Okay. But hopefully I'll be ready to be live for the next Buckeye show. I guess that'd be this coming Wednesday.
Yeah, well, I know that Big Ten Media Days are Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm going to have to get together with the boys and see when they're going to be available. I think it's going to be a Thursday show.
Okay, well, I will set my calendar for Thursday, Mark. I'll be hoping ready for that.
Post Media Days.
Post Media, okay. Well, Mark, the reason I called in is I know that, obviously you're thinking about putting together your top 25 list, what teams you think will win the division or should win their conference or so. Something I wanted to ask you, Mark. I've heard this spoken about in bits and pieces, but I never heard it directly taken on position by position. Do you think, Mark, let's say when you do your evaluations, we know that not every position is equal. For example, the NFL, the best way to look at it is the NFL values certain positions by salary. A tackle, a quarterback, a receiver, a cornerback with a C, a defensive end that's good at getting after the tackle, or getting after the quarterback. So when you do your evaluations, Mark, if a team said, hey, they said, but you looked at a team and said, hey, we're bringing back I almost feel like putting a quarterback is almost putting it over the edge, but that is one of the positions. But we're bringing back 2 tackles, an outside receiver, a big play receiver, obviously a quarterback, and on the defensive side, we're bringing back some defensive ends that are good at getting us the passer, and we're bringing back 2 cover corners, and another team, maybe the other position's not either newcomers or a little weaker, and the other team said, hey, we have our guards coming back, our tight ends back, our running backs back, our safety and linebackers are back. Maybe it'd be the equal amount of players on each team returning and or highly rated. Do you look at that and say, hey, they have their better positions? Again, maybe you almost want to take quarterback out because that would just put it over the top. But generally speaking, would you say, hey, we got these positions coming back, and they have these ones coming back, and this one's better than this one?
Yeah. So a few things come to mind. One would be that I heard more than one NFL personnel director say that aside from the quarterback, that they look at returning offensive line starts, production, and quality of players, that the unit of the offensive line is the most important unit on the field after quarterback, or maybe because there's 5 of them, equal to or greater than quarterback collectively.
Right. Maybe I shouldn't have used guard as an example, but I just felt like I needed a few offensive.
So I think that that comes into play. Also, so we all see the listing of Pittsburgh 2022, 7 starters back on offense, 4 starters back on defense. Okay, that is what I consider to be a very rough starting point. Okay, give that a glance, and then okay, who are we talking about? How well does that program recruit at those positions of loss? Because many programs are going to replenish those positions rather easily versus other programs that are hurt drastically by personnel losses.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, there are primary positions that I think at this point, the NFL game and the college game mirror each other. This is not the 1980s.
Right.
And so all the positions that you listed are positions of greater value in college football as well.
Right. Okay. So, for example, yourself, you might, Mr. Ford or yourself, when you're going to make your evaluations, and I guess the prize will come out in 2 weeks or so, you're going to say, hey, they can have these people back. I know you also mentioned how well they recruit in positions of need, but certain positions returning will potentially influence your rankings as opposed to teams bringing back their safeties and their tight end and their running back, which are good, but they lost 2 tackles and no corner and all their corners and the receivers.
So you've heard our buddy Steve Dace. He's got a team total, whatever the name for it is, total team ranking, team talent, total ranking.
I've heard that.
It is.
Like you, I have some disputes with him, but I like Steve, and I'm willing to hear him out.
Well, I bring that up because I don't think he makes a distinction between positions.
Right. And you and I right now are making such distinctions.
And we should make a distinction between positions. Now, I'm not criticizing his system because he has a system and I don't.
Right.
If I weren't producing the number of videos and the level of content that I would build a system, but I just have too many
Yeah.
videos to produce.
He's not putting
every
out nearly the
day to
amount
build
of
some kind of system.
football. I think he does one football video a week and comes on your show. Well, no, you're on his show. I'm sorry, but so obviously, yeah, he has more time to work on that than you may. At least as far I know, he does other things in life.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things I would like to do that I don't take off on, and that's one right there. So at least he has a system, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I've brought a number of suggestions to him that he thought were valid, much like the recruiting rankings in college football. The quarterback is measured the same as each position.
Right.
And we know that a generational quarterback who is typically a high 4-star or a 5-star quarterback brings so much value to Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, etc., that there should be some weight given to that. Now, I something about that rubs me the wrong way because I like to value each individual player the same, but it's only accurate, it's only fact, it's only truth that the quarterback, if you are able to sign a 5-star quarterback, that his level of impact, if he comes through, is decidedly more than a 5-star safety.
The NFL agrees. The safety can't ask for $150 million guaranteed. In the NFL, you'd be the All-Pro, first team Hall of Fame Ronnie Lott. Well, Ronnie Lott actually would be different these days because he couldn't have the hits, but your salary would be a fifth. Your guarantee might be a fifth of what an average QB could start a QB could probably make. I don't know, a fifth, but it'd be significantly less.
Sure.
Yeah, I made up that.
So for as much as I would like that not to be part of the equation by 247 Sports, for example, to be more accurate, it should be.
Right. Okay. They gotta consult with you, Mark. I wish they would, take that in.
If you're going to take it to that degree, then they should probably build it out for every position, saying, okay, a 1.0 value is the average. It's almost like a WAR in baseball. And then say the quarterback's 1.5 and a running back's 0.9 or whatever. But that would take a lot of thought and analysis to determine what that should be.
Okay. Mark, just one more off-season type of thing I'd like to ask you about, and then I'll let you go. I know a lot of people are probably waiting to speak to you, and I appreciate that. Mark, the two best running backs in our lives, I know you're 6 years older than me, or 6 or 7 years older than me, but it's not enough that you saw Gale Sayers or Jim Brown. You were born after they both came up, right? So basically, maybe you remember some of the 70s better than me, but I don't remember them. But still, I think this answer will be the same for both of us. Mark, in my opinion, the two best running backs in our lives, one of them was great in college. One didn't really show his greatness until the NFL, are Bo Jackson and Terrell Davis, both of which, in my opinion, had their careers. One was cut short by how long did Bo play? 3 years or so, 2 or 3 years. And Terrell Davis played 6 years officially, but he only actually played 3. He played 3 full seasons, in which he won with 2,000 yards and MVP. The other 2, and the other 3 were either missed totally or played a couple games. They still made the Hall of Fame, but they only played 3 seasons. So something I wouldn't bring up during the season, but perhaps my off-season question would be: Could you and I say that in our lifetimes the two best running backs are Terrell Davis and Bo Jackson? One of which again was more related to college. He's probably the greatest college running back in our life, but overall, those two I would say are the two best running backs of our lives.
Well, I've got to say, Yakov, that if you would have asked me, Mark, name the 2 greatest running backs that you've ever seen, I'd be sitting here a while before I would have named Terrell Davis.
But now that I brought it up, though, you're intrigued by that comment, or you're still?
Well, again, I'd like to see his numbers at Georgia versus the NFL.
Yeah, well, that's why I sort of said Bo Jackson. I think we could have while you're looking at that, maybe we could say that Bo Jackson's the best college running back of our lives. A linebacker. He was a linebacker build and a sprinter speed.
Well, sure. So if you bring up any position but running backs and start to compare the greatest of all time, well, you've morphed the NFL and college together, number one. Number two, there are guys, the impact of the offensive line is great. You can talk about guys that we can just have the conversation of just the sheer brilliance of their athleticism and their size and their strength and their speed and their cutting ability and all that supersedes anything we could measure statistically. And then we could have a nuts and bolts statistical argument. I'm looking at what I remembered of Terrell Davis. He was drafted in, I think, the 6th round.
That's why
he didn't
what to do with that
do much in college.
Right.
He wasn't bad. When he was given the football, he averaged 5.2 yards per carry and scored 16 touchdowns in college. He never ran for more than 824 yards. That was his best collegiate season. He ran for 445 his senior season. Played a full season, only ran for 445, 4.6 per carry. So
he elevated that once he got
his college career was average.
Right.
He was an average quasi-starting running back. I won't even call him a starting running back. I bet Georgia 92, 93, 94. So he crossed over into the Garrison Hurst.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
1 or 2 years. So, yeah, I would not have come up with Terrell Davis for quite a while. And his NFL career was brilliant, like you say, for 3 years. For 3 or 4 years, he was the best running back in the NFL. But
I wonder how something like that could happen, Mark. It's not like an offensive lineman where maybe you're just physically immature, and in college you were okay, and then you became an all-pro and the best in the game because you just when you were in college you just haven't physically reached your peak yet. But running back is far more about just your physical abilities than a lineman. If you have great instincts and athletic ability, you can be a great running back, and same with cornerback. But offensive lineman or safety or so, you can't just say I'm going to use my athletic ability to be a great be a great center or be a great safety. It's going to be you have to be a student of the game to really excel. So I just find it interesting that, again, this is not a steroid conversation, that he could be what he was and then be one of the most explosive athletes. Where was that explosion in college? I wonder how someone can be what he was then, and all of a sudden to be so elite. I just thought
they did have a great offensive line at Denver.
Right. Yeah. I would imagine that Georgia, fielded some fairly talented. I know it wasn't the peak of it, but they weren't putting guys out there with like 6'1", 220. Probably had some quality offensive linemen, even if they didn't make it to the NFL, which I can't remember what happened in those days. But
well, they also, as you recall, had a blocking scheme, a zone blocking scheme that was revolutionary at Denver. That was developed that nobody had seen to that point.
I've heard Mark Schlaver.
Yeah, he was on that one. Yes.
Yeah. Even I watched his X and O's diagrams on that a few times.
Yeah, and Terrell Davis was the first of the one cut. You kind of went along the line of scrimmage, and then you saw the lane, and you one cut and go downhill, and that was kind of the concept. And not to detract from Terrell Davis or downgrade his career, but after he fell off and disappeared, and to your point, yeah, he had the 2008-yard season, 21 touchdowns when they won the Super Bowl, Elway's last year, and then he was pretty much done.
Yeah, very serious, multiple knee injuries.
Yeah, he had one. His last season was, he was pretty productive. Ran for 4.2 yards per carry, 700 yards, but nothing close to what he had accomplished before. But I point to the offensive line because all of his successors were extremely successful as well.
It's a good point. I guess I didn't study that. That's why I called in, Mark. I needed some help with that. And
I'm trying to come up with names. Oh, Mike Anderson out of Utah was.
Remember, he was the big strong guy that was.
Yeah, Orlando. Shoot, let me look these. Oh shoot, see if I can. There were like 3 to 4 running backs right after. So Elway retired. I think Brian Greasy was their next starting quarterback. and they fell off, but they were still a playoff caliber team. So the very next season, their starting running back, Olandis Gary. When I said Olandis,
Okay, I remember him, right.
yes, he ran for 1,100 yards, and they weren't even that good the next year. They were 6-10, and then the next year, the 2000, Mike Anderson, 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns, 5 yards a carry. 2001, Mike Anderson again, but he wasn't so good. And that's when he shared time with Terrell Davis. Terrell Davis's last year, they had Mike Anderson, Terrell Davis, and Olandis Gary in the same backfield, all sharing carries that year in 01. And then we'll only go one other year. Then it was Clinton Portis, 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns. So they had nearly the production with Olandis Gary, Mike Anderson, and Clinton Portis.
I'm glad I called in, Mark. Maybe I need to reevaluate my top two, but I'm going to go with Bo Jackson. Who's still top one. He obviously just such a short period of play that it's hard to really evaluate. I mean, I played 2 seasons.
I thought you were going to say Barry Sanders.
Yeah, he's up there too. It's hard to. It's difficult. He's up there too. Obviously, you got to see far more sample of him. I guess maybe I just meant in potential. If they both played 10 years, they would have been up there, but they both had far shorter careers. Mark, I know you want to move on. I as usual, I enjoy speaking to you. I'm gonna get back to work, but I will be listening to the show.
Thanks, Yakov. Appreciate it.
Day, Mark.
Have a good day. Yes, the real MVP, SEC. Yakov always brings an interesting, intriguing, off-topic comment to the table / question. But that's when the Rolodex in the brain just doesn't work the way it used to. I had Mike Anderson in my head. I came up with that one. I came up with Olandis, couldn't come up with his last name. And then we had Clinton Portis, of course, who was at Miami in college and then on to the NFL with the Denver Broncos and had a remarkable, at least that was his first starting season, almost 1,600 yards and 15 touchdowns for the Broncos in 01. So that would have been playing for the Miami team that beat Florida in the Sugar Bowl 2000 that many Miami fans believe to be the best team in the country and should have played in the BCS championship game, although I would raise my hand up for Washington, which of course tagged Miami with its one loss in a 33-30 game in Seattle. The Washington team that beat Drew Brees in the Rose Bowl by 10 points, but the game wasn't quite that close. We need the StreamYard link again. All right. What time is it? Okay, we'll keep going here. And I'm going to say, as I just dropped the link in the chat, for the guys that jump on StreamYard with the after show parties, I'm not ignoring you. So I would love to join the after show parties with Tim and One Scoop John and Joey and who else jumps in those? I think Willie's there and others. But my goodness, I've posted one video, now 2 videos since this morning's post came out on the Big Ten TV ratings, 2 videos to the main channel here in like 13 days. And I want to post 1 video per day, but I have been focused on everything else going on in my personal life. But these team channels they're just like a conveyor belt. I just have to like grind out these videos to supply videos to all these team channels all the time that sometimes I don't give the main channel the attention that I should, but I want to produce 1 quality video on the main channel every day. That's my goal. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. The real MVP's here.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I typed in your chat SEC, and immediately the anti-SEC crowd came out. ESPN controls ESPN. We're overrated. We're horrible. And I watched one of the simulation games, and in the comments, somebody said we play an SEC plays an FCS team. So our schedule, we just play terrible teams, Mark. Can we get your thoughts about these things?
All right. Somebody sent me a DM yesterday that somebody posted on social media that if Penn State, Wisconsin, they named a bunch of teams in the Big Ten under Ohio State, joined the SEC, that they would win 9 or 10 games every year. And I said, well, that is partially true. You're covering a lot of ground here. That's a big statement to make. So it depends on the year, depends on the team. What SEC schedule are we going to give them? But I just put it this way. I said, if we are rating conferences on a scale of 1 to 100, and we'll not say that the SEC is perfect 100, but we'll make them the standard, since the SEC is, and everybody listening to my voice right now, this may not sit well with you, but it's just fact. It is just, it's opinion, but it can be verified in so many different ways on so many levels that for right now, fact, the SEC is the best conference. It's not even debatable. I wish it was. I would love to have debates on here. I would love to have shows where we could debate conferences, and I would have to be like pulling my hair out trying to figure out, and it's so close. How do we decide? It's not. I don't even find it worth producing a video to say these are the conference listings. And the Big Ten's the second best conference, and that's not even debatable. But the SEC is the best conference. It's not disputed. It's not debatable. The results on the field speak to it. And then you can go to all the periphery measurements of recruiting rankings and NFL draft choices. So those people that say recruiting rankings are skewed, they can say that all they want, but then those recruiting rankings are reflected on the field with results and championships. And then it's even reflected in the NFL draft selections. So maybe the whole thing's rigged. Like the recruiting rankings are rigged. And then when they go on the field, the refs make the games rigged. And then the NFL says, we are just going to go along with this college football. We don't care about our business. We're going to go along with college football's narrative that the SEC is the best. And we're just going to recruit and we're going to draft those players because we want them to feel good about themselves. So we're going to screw our business. We're drafting not the best players. We're going to draft SEC players. No, it all runs through a line from high school to college to the NFL, and backed up by the most importantly of everything, the results on the field, that the SEC is the best conference. It's been the best conference for 15 to 18 years, decidedly. Before that, it was an argument, and that's all there is to it. I would love to be able to debate it. I would love if we could have that debate, but we can't.
Yeah, my favorite thing is what Odyssey 2002, I believe, posted in your comments. If you could pull that up. Since I'm a Kentucky fan, I can't say anything about the SEC because Kentucky's just been horrible in the SEC. We go winless every year in there. We can't win a game to save our life, acting like we're just terrible now. We're top 5 SEC team right now. And I can't brag about that. I can't brag about my conference. I mean, this would be the equivalent of Purdue or Minnesota can't talk about the Big Ten. What do you think about that, Mark? Since I'm an SEC fan, can I talk about the SEC in whole, or am I not allowed to?
I will say it this way, that I understand for those people, and I can't find that comment, but I understand for those people that, there we go. We'll keep that up there. I understand the criticism of those people that say everybody in the SEC, regardless of how good or bad their team is, can always just hide behind the SEC logo and say SEC, 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 and I root for South Carolina and we suck, but we're going to ignore that. I get that, but if we're having a team debate, then we will talk about Kentucky. How good is Kentucky? How good is Kentucky against the SEC? How good is Kentucky against the rest of college football? How well have they done in their bowl games? We can have that conversation just about Kentucky. Just like we can have that conversation about Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt sucks. They are horrible. They are so bad, I can't even describe how bad Vandy is. But they're in the SEC. So can they raise the SEC banner? They can, because they do belong to the conference. But so they're just so deplorably bad that they lose to everybody. So I see both sides of it, but I just think that that's easily remedied by saying, what's our debate today? What are we talking about conferences? So if we're talking about conferences, the Kentucky fan, the South Carolina fan, the Ole Miss fan, the whoever fan can say, let's talk about the SEC and let's talk about who's the best conference, and the SEC is the best conference. But if the Texas or Oklahoma or TCU fan wants to say, well, you're only South Carolina. Well, let's measure up now TCU against South Carolina and have that conversation, and we can break it down to just individual teams and programs.
Yeah, and you know why being the top 5 or top 7 SEC school matters, Mark? Because if you're in the top 7, you're probably a borderline top 25 team.
Sure.
So when people say, the SEC, you're a Kentucky fan. If you're top 5 in the SEC, you're a top 25 team. So this idea or the message behind the words that, since you're a Kentucky fan, your team's terrible, so you can't talk about the SEC unless you're Alabama and Georgia. That's another one of my favorite arguments is if you take the top 2 teams away from SEC, we're just awful. I mean, you could, sure, let's apply that same standard to the Big Ten. How would the Big Ten, Mark, be without Michigan and Ohio State? Would they be any good?
No.
What about Oklahoma and Texas?
Level. If you want to win Liberty Bowls and Music City Bowls, yeah, the Big Ten would be fine. But in terms of competing nationally, no.
Yeah. Who won the 2019 championship?
LSU.
Oh, are they Alabama or Georgia?
They are not.
Oh, okay. So it's amazing to me that the third best school in the SEC over the last 3 or 4 years since they won a title has won the national championship. We're not allowed to talk about that since they went 500 2 straight years. It's like schools can never go down. They can only be horizontal.
The only thing I will say is that, yes, the SEC is the best conference, and I've not had a chance to look at some of the comments, but I've just glanced at them, and it seems like maybe I'm getting a little criticism for being an SEC shill, which is kind of funny because I get criticized for everything. But that's fine. I get it. If I was up here talking about the Big Ten, then I'm a Big Ten homer. And yeah, I'm just stating it's not even disputable. One of my contributors, I won't name him, wanted to have a debate about this after this was about 3 or 4 games into the bowl season that the SEC lost those first 3 or 4 bowl games. And he was like, you're saying the SEC is the best conference all the time. Look at them in the bowl games. And I was like, well, first of all, I'm not making excuses. If they play football and the games count, we are going to count them. So I'm not making excuses for a few bowl losses. But let's understand that's a very small sample size, number one. Number two, let's just watch the rest of the bowl games. Let's just let it all play out and let's see. And of course, the SEC didn't have a great bowl record, but they won the most important games, of course. And also, you can't just isolate the bowl games. You have to take the regular season non-conference games in which the SEC was the best, not by much. The Big Ten was right there. But we could see what happened when the best team in the Big Ten played the best or second best team in the SEC. They got trounced. So I would love to be able to have the debate. I wish it was close. I wish we could have that debate, but we can't.
Yeah, and as you were saying with the bowl games, I mean, look at the odds for this upcoming season. I mean, there's a reason that I believe every single SEC team is favored against their main non-conference rival. Even Florida's favored against Utah.
Oh, I started in on that last rant. I know where I was headed. I will say, like I pointed out several times last week during SEC Media Days, is that when the SEC hyperbole reaches a ridiculous point, that's when I do call out some folks to say, okay, whoa, you do have the best conference. I sent out a tweet last week that I enjoyed sending out. It said something like fact, the SEC is the best conference, fact, something else, fact. But then when we have people like Joe Tessitore saying that Ohio State's schedule is a joke, okay, this is where this has to stop. It's like, okay, stop right there. You're too entrenched in the SEC. That's all you watch. That's all you know. That's all you see. You know, you are obviously ignorant and you're not insightful about the rest of college football across the national landscape. Because if a schedule that includes Notre Dame, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, Wisconsin, and Iowa is a joke, then you really don't know what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, there's a happy medium here. The Big Ten can still be a difficult conference, but be not as difficult as the SEC.
No,
It's not like the SEC is running away with it. They're just miles and miles. Some of the gap has been pulled back, I would say, from 2 years ago to this year, even.
there are
But
two differences between the SEC and the Big Ten. On the field, there are two differences in the results. Now that we can go through all sorts of talent and coaching comparisons, but on the field, there's Alabama and Georgia that Ohio State may be with them. I think they need to prove it because they sure didn't prove it last year and didn't prove it in the 2020 national championship game. And I know Buckeye fans are going to cite a lot of injuries and COVID issues, and those are valid, and Ohio State lost its best running back the first play of the game and all that business. But they got blown out by Alabama. And we're not, despite being the most talented team by far in the conference, I don't care what anybody says, the best roster and the best team on paper, they didn't pull through against Michigan. So therefore, they never got a chance. They never showed anything. And they had a lackluster season, defensively especially. So Ohio State needs to prove it. Now, we know that they're capable, but they need to prove it. But for right now, Alabama and Georgia are above everybody in the Big Ten. So the SEC has this layer of two teams that can't be touched right this second. And then also, the Big Ten has more Illinois and Rutgers and what Indiana and Northwestern were last year. They have more bad teams. Now, nobody's as bad as Vandy in the Big Ten, but the Big Ten is like 3 or 4, and the SEC just doesn't have that. After Vandy, who's the worst team in the SEC? I guess it's Missouri, and they're not bad.
I would say it's Florida because Florida lost to Missouri.
And based on last year, yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe it's Florida. Florida went 2-6 last year. Florida could go to the ACC Coastal Division and maybe win it. Like, the SEC is stacked between 3 and 13. Those teams are they're good. They're decent. Everybody's at least decent. You can't, who do you take in the SEC Western Division they're all good? Mississippi State or Arkansas or somebody might finish Auburn. Even Auburn. If Auburn went to the ACC Coastal Division, I would be interested to see if Auburn or South Carolina or somebody like that played in the Big Ten Western Division this year. I'm not saying that they would win it, but nobody would want to play them.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And my final point will be with Texas A&M's recruiting class last year being unbelievable. 8 5-stars, which is absurd, just an absurd number. If they recruit like that, and maybe next year or the year after that, is it going to be possible that they are more talented than Alabama?
So the Alabama classes that have been superseded by Texas A&M, which to date's only one, it was so close as a number 2 that I would say no, because the Alabama classes that fill out the rest of those 4 years on the roster are number 1 or 2 in the country, and A&M was 7 or 11 or whatever they were, something like that. So for them to make up that gap, Like, it's not like Texas A&M had the greatest class of all time on paper this past season, and Alabama was 14. Alabama was 2. I think they were 2. Georgia was 3. Ohio State was 4. Whatever it was. So Alabama.
Yeah, it's that SEC bias that the SEC had the top 3 mark.
Yeah. Yes.
But that's all I got for you. SEC still number 1. Hit the like button.
Thanks, man. We'll talk to you soon. All right. Let me check out the chat real quick just to make sure I haven't missed anything. Tim is letting us know that nobody outside of Georgia is afraid of anyone in the SEC East. Yeah, I'm not talking about people being afraid, but they're capable, competent football teams. They're full of talent. They're decent. Kentucky last year was a top 15 team in the country. And this year, I would expect Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida to all be somewhere, and South Carolina to be somewhere between 15 and 30. Somewhere like that. All right, next up, we got Jacob on the line. Jacob, how you doing?
Good, you?
I am doing just fine. What's up?
Oh, I've been a long-time listener for, well, I wouldn't say long time, but I've been following you a lot recently and haven't had a chance to make a live show yet, so I'm pretty excited.
Cool. Thanks for being here. I see you root for Kansas State.
Yep, the few and the proud.
I love when people call. I don't know if you've ever heard me say this before. I love to hear from fan bases that are not Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and I'll name the other 5. I'll spare you, but you know what I mean. I like to hear from the Kansas State fans, from the Purdue fans, from the Oregon State fans.
I was just curious if you've done much digging or investigating on the new Big 12 commissioner and what you thought about him. And have you heard much about the rumors between the Big 12 and the Pac-12 and the ACC, the alignment going on there, and the constant subterfuge?
Yeah, so I can't speak to the former. I have not delved into his history. I know we had a conversation about him a few weeks ago on one of the, might have been the West Virginia show, where some people that were a little bit more between, let's say, Tony Altamore, who we've had on a dozen times, great insight into college football in terms of as a structure, the landscape of college football. Had some really good insight. And we had Dave Smoke from Sikkim 365. He was on as well. And they had things to say because David covers Baylor and the Big 12. I haven't taken the opportunity to really look into his past to evaluate whether I think that was a good hire or not. I just didn't choose to do that. Unlike when the Pac-12 hired George Kliavkoff, I did have some response to that. So I can't really form an opinion or respond there. Now, when it comes to the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the ACC, okay. In some ways, I believe that the Big 12 is in the best position because it is now a collection of programs that are decent programs, but are not attractive to the SEC or the Big Ten. So it's mediocrity. That might be a little bit harsh for Big 12 fans, but its mediocrity is almost protecting it at this point. And then its strength in numbers with now 12, and based on the Pac-12 losing its top 1 to 4 programs, let's say UCLA's 4 to 5 in that range, that the Big 12 is now in position to not merge with the Pac-12, and we know that those talks are off, but to pick from the Pac-12. And that's what I would have suggested from the start. I didn't know why the Big 12 was talking to the Pac-12 anyway. I guess it doesn't hurt to talk to a conference that's trying to survive. But I would think, why would we merge when we can just take from you? We're in a position of strength relative to you. Why don't we just take from you?
That's interesting. I agree. Another kind of question that I've been thinking lately, in reference to the expanding the playoffs, I just don't see, with as big of a deal and money generator as March Madness is and as many eyes as it pulls in, I just don't understand how expanding the playoffs wouldn't increase the revenue for college football as a whole.
So I'm not putting your two statements together. You just cited the revenue jackpot that the NCAA tournament is, but you're wondering about a college football expansion as a playoff?
Yeah, like, because March Madness is such a huge pull, the big tournament, all the teams
Exactly.
across the country. I don't understand where the hesitance to expand the playoffs is.
Okay. I thought you were arguing the other direction.
No,
yes.
I want to see as many underdogs playing for titles and upsets as possible. I think it'd be entertaining.
I absolutely agree with you. I don't know where that hesitancy comes from. I know what direction it came from. It came from the ACC. There was some hesitancy there, and I think the Big Ten and the Pac-12 had some degrees of, and I don't know why the Big Ten would be pushing back in any such way. The Big Ten may benefit the most. If you run through the seasons of the last 8 to 10 years, the Big Ten would have benefited the most from an expanded playoff because it has a lot of Wisconsins and Penn States and Michigans that don't make the playoff, but are in the top 8 to 10 in the country. I can't answer that question. It seems as though at one point, the other conferences, when the SEC, I think the timing of it was an issue. The SEC had just accepted Oklahoma and Texas. The other conferences felt threatened, and that is at the same time that there had been a playoff proposal put to the table, and then it seemed as though that the other conferences just wanted to make a power play to say, we're not accepting what's going on in college football right now. We're not accepting what the SEC is proposing. Not that the SEC proposed it. The College Football Playoff Selection Committee developed another committee that proposed this, but it was backed by the SEC and it was backed by ESPN, and ESPN, SEC, almost put the two together. It was backed. So I almost think from a timing standpoint, with the SEC having just taken Texas and Oklahoma, it was the other three conferences saying, no, wait a minute. Let's review this because this has to be good for you and not so good for us. And we're going to put up a united front to say, let's wait on this and let's review this. And you don't get your way with everything.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you said, the Big Ten has so many top 25 teams in it that aren't top 4 teams every year, or the Big 12 seems to always put out 1 or 2 that are fighting for it at the end. Even the Pac-12 or the ACC, a couple each year. So it just seems like we would, as fans, get the best product out of something with along those lines.
Yeah, I agree. And the people that argue against a playoff, an expanded playoff, point to the results of the last 8 years of playoff. And I understand their argument that it's not been competitive, and that bringing lesser teams into it, how would that make it competitive? My pushback against that line of thinking is that our job is not to run football programs and make them competitive. That is the job of those individual conferences and football programs, to make yourselves competitive. Our job is to present the best playoff system for the sport.
Yeah, I don't. It just kind of surprises me every time I hear complaints about it. But my last opinion before I hop off and let somebody else hop on is I think K-State's going to beat OU for the first conference game of the of the season this year. I think OU has a good chance of being one of the top teams at the end of the season, but I think with the new head coach and some players leaving, that I don't know that they'll be a very cohesive team at the beginning of the season. And I think K-State's had some success against them lately, and they've got some exciting pieces this year. So I think they have a very good chance to knock them off early, and I think they have a pretty solid chance of playing in Arlington at the end of the season this year.
I'm drawing a blank. You beat them 2 straight years, right?
Yes, sir.
That was 2019 and 20.
Yes, sir.
And then what happened this past season?
I don't remember the exact.
I'm not remembering
score,
that game.
But OU did beat them last year. It was, I want to say it was somewhat competitive until the second half, and then it kind of fell away from K-State.
I'm drawing a blank on that game. So let me ask you this. Do you think that your team has a shot to win the Big 12?
I think they have as good of a shot as anybody in the Big 12. I don't know that they're favored, but I think that they have as good of a chance as anybody to win.
37-31 OU. Yeah, I remember it wasn't quite that close. I think Kansas State scored late, but it was a pretty good ball game. Yeah, okay. I just know that Kansas State's popped up a few times here and there as a dark horse in the Big 12, and I haven't done a deep dive on Kansas State yet, so just curious. All right, Jacob, thanks so much for the call. Call back anytime.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
All right, quick look at the chat, then we'll bring Tim in. A lot of Ohio State and Michigan fans, of course, in the chat, probably not happy about my comments about the SEC. Tim, how's it going? Oh, we don't have you.
No, my bad. I was on mute. Good. Just enjoying the chat as always. As always, we have an incredible amount of wealth in the chat, and then a couple knuckleheads that think that college football began 4 years ago and that the SEC has been as tough as it's always. Someone's trying to tell me, like, I forgot the guy's name, but he's a Georgia fan, telling me that how Georgia's only 3 wins behind USC, and that, you know, realize that USC's in the Pac-12 and, you know, Georgia's in the SEC, and the 853 wins are way more difficult in the SEC. You know, I'm like, look, dude, it's like it's not been this way for the past century. You know, SEC has been the top dog for the past, you know, let's say 10 years. Go back farther than that. Look where all the national championships were. They weren't in the SEC, man. You know, and the Big Ten, the Rose Bowl was called the granddaddy of them all for a reason, because that was the national game for the better part of the century. It usually pitted to 2 best teams in general together. So many national championships were decided in that bowl game. So I don't really know where this guy's coming with his ideas.
I started watching college football around 1977. And my goodness, throughout the 80s, a number of years, I thought that the Pac-12, the Pac-10 at the time, was probably the best conference in college football. You know, that it was fun back then because there wasn't a best conference. It changed by year, and it was not even decisive in any given year. It was like, man, we could have a great debate. Is it the Big Ten, the SEC, the Pac? Who is it? We always knew it wasn't the ACC. The ACC wasn't very good then. There was no Florida State there at the time. But the ACC was almost playing at a group of 5, semi-group of 5 level at that point. But the other conferences were very comparable.
Yeah, I think that he maybe gets all of his information from the SEC network or something, you know, talking about the storied history of the SEC, which has a great history.
Sure.
Absolutely. But it's not like head and shoulders above the rest of college football. I just really think some of these SEC, and you know, do you ever notice, I don't really ever see Alabama fans going SEC. I hear them saying roll tide. You know what I mean? I guess when you're on the top, you don't have to go, we want to be like the big boys, you know, but you hear a lot of LSU fans even who had a great 2019. Good for you guys, you know, but in general, you know, they like, you know, the SEC likes to bag on Notre Dame, but I mean, I'm pretty sure Notre Dame's been handling LSU teams like LSU and stuff outside of 2019. talent teams. But I remember some Notre Dame wins recently against LSU. So I guess it just gets a bit old. I have all respect. I agree with you. Top to bottom, talent, player for player, the SEC is undisputed the best conference. But when you got the bottom dwellers or even the middle of the pack SEC schools calling out like they're going to take out Ohio State or they're going to be better than Clemson, or it gets just really a bit, I don't know, embarrassing for them, for lack of a better word. It's just a lack of awareness, I guess.
It's not a good look. Now, if you want to argue if you're South Carolina that you play in the toughest conference and therefore your record should be taken into consideration, your lousy 4-8 records could be 6-6 in another conference. But don't try to argue that your 4-8 football team would be going 9-3 somewhere else.
Look at their out of conference. I mean, they're handed 4 victories. A lot of these teams, especially the lower level SEC schools, some of the schools that we talk about always winning bowl games and always getting to bowl games, they have a losing record in conference, but they have 4 patsies that get lined up every year, so they go to bowl games. I mean, they're the only conference that I know of that throws a softball right maybe 3/4 through the season to give you an additional bye week in week like 8 or 9. I don't know when they do their annual, Little Sisters of the Poor tour. But I mean, it's very obvious that they're very clever. They all said, hey, shh, nobody tell that we're buying players. Don't do that. So be quiet. We're going to buy recruits. Don't snitch on each other. That's what that came down from on high. We're going to do it, but don't you dare snitch on each other. And then on top of that, it's going to be the fact that we're going to give you guys an easy little game. Football's a tough sport. You're in the middle of a conference run. To be able to have a week where you can really rest all of your starters, get guys healthy for the home stretch, last 2 games against your big rival, that is a huge benefit. But no one ever talks about that. And SEC's been doing that for the better part of I don't know how long. So again, good job, SEC. UGA, dude, hold your head high. Bama, Roll Tide. You guys are crushing it. The rest of you guys just settle down a little bit because it's kind of silly. A lot of us have been watching football long enough to remember you guys are not that powerful as you come down a little bit farther past your top 2, maybe even 3. But even in any given year, like we're seeing with LSU, we would have been undefeated if we were a different conference. No, you wouldn't. That team's not that good. I've watched them play. They weren't going to go undefeated in any conference. So let's just calm down with, from top to bottom, yes, on average. But that doesn't mean that Kentucky's going to beat the top half of the Big Ten. It's not going to. So just settle it down.
Our guy RW has something to say for you there.
I missed it. What did he say?
Says this guy is a crybaby.
Crybaby, dude. I got 11 national championships, dude. You know what I mean? I'm not going to cry about anything. We sucked. Fill in your noun there for the past 5 years, 6 years. But even within there, check this out. How many of these guys in the SEC would love to have had top 5 recruiting classes, a Rose Bowl win? And that was under Helton. Think about this one, you guys. Our worst run, possibly our worst coach ever, had 2 top 10 recruiting classes, a win in the Rose Bowl, and 2 top 10 finishes. I think people just get hooked up in this SEC hype way too much. We got absolutely plastered by Alabama in 2016, but who didn't? Was Kentucky or these schools beat up Alabama in 2016? I don't know. To me, you'll never catch me saying, you never heard me say Pac-12, Pac-12. You'll never hear me say Big Ten, because I want to beat everyone in my conference. And it's not about if USC goes 4-5, I'm not going to be happy on the season if all of a sudden I go, oh, well, yeah, but at least we won. At least we won the national championship. I mean, someone up there, Ohio State won the national championship. So Big Ten. No, dude, my team sucked. I'm not happy at all. And no, you SEC fans, you're not fooling anybody. You're not an SEC fan. Your team sucked, and you try to ride on coattails, dude. So just relax. Sorry, I got riled up.
Well, Tim, we've got Vanity Rose, who says, let's have a look at the SEC graduation rates versus Notre Dame, the Pac-12, or the Big Ten. They can tell me about how great their team was as they shine my boots. Well, that's a whole other discussion. If we just want to talk football, we can just talk football. If we want to talk about the institutions themselves and the things that make them great, football and money and academics and all of it, then we can have that discussion. So I don't disregard that comment by any stretch, Vanity. We appreciate you being here. That's just a different conversation as well.
Yeah, this is about football. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be one of those guys. I'm not going to be UCLA or Cal or Stanford and say, yeah, but what about our kids are smarter than yours? Last time I checked, they don't give away points for a spelling bee at halftime. So, I mean, it doesn't matter. If we're on a football board, we're talking about wins. We're talking about national championships. We're talking about that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I'm sure we can find those debates elsewhere. Like there are YouTube channels, there are sites that talk about, academic standings of universities, and those people have those debates about academic standards and how many Rhodes Scholars you have, and they're not bringing football into their conversation to say, but our football team's better than yours.
And web security, has USC ever made the playoffs? No. You know why? Because the SEC and the Big Ten cried to daddy and said, can we knock these guys down a peg? Because we're doing worse than what these guys are doing as far as paying for guys to actually come to our school. Not a guy getting paid who was ineligible. After a 5-year investigation, they found that a guy got money at the end of his sophomore year in his family. There was nothing about, I guess, paying recruits. You guys ever heard of that in the SEC? I mean, I've heard plenty of reports about you guys. I mean, Jimbo flat out just threw it out there. Everybody knows you guys are paying for guys to actually come to your schools. So please stop, dude. And again, we self-sanctioned with Helton, but we're back. I don't care. Am I saying we're going to win the national championship? No. But are we going to go we've had 2 losing seasons in what, Mark? 40 years? 50 years?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like what we just saw the last 4 or 5 years off of Helton is what USC is as a program. Get your shots in now. But again, USC sucked in the 90s. How were we in 2000? We sucked in the 50s, but how were we in the 60s and 70s? And really even in the 80s? USC sucks in the 90s, and they sucked under Helton, and they got hammered by the NCAA. And any of you fans out there that think that your school wasn't doing what USC got busted for doing or worse, it just had, we got caught. No, man, they sat there and they dug, and they never found any link to USC. You know that, Mark? Literally, they even said, what they came out with? You know what Paul D said? He said, well, you should have known. If we held that standard to the entire SEC, how many schools in the SEC would have been on probation? They should have known guys were getting money. So again, yes, USC has not made the playoffs. Fair enough. But let's just watch about, this isn't about last year. This is about going forward. And I'll take my coach against pretty much anyone except for maybe 3 of you out there. So good luck to you guys in the middle of the SEC. Well done. LSU, good luck with Brian Kelly. I'm really going to enjoy watching that. I'm sorry, but I'm going to. All of us have been really close watching Brian Kelly for the past 10 years. Knows a lot of empty, the dude had a 500 record against winning teams. He kicked the crap out of schools that didn't have a team that could stop his offensive line. But outside of that, whenever you got a defensive line or a front 7 that could stop that offensive line, what happened to Notre Dame? If you think I'm talking smack, talk to Notre Dame fans, because they'll tell you the exact same thing. He's great. He's very organized. He's definitely not a player's coach. I freaking hate the guy. And then another thing someone says, how many players, by the way, did a mass exodus go join Brian Kelly at LSU? How many coaches went along with Brian Kelly to go to LSU?
No, we didn't see the same thing that we saw out of Lincoln Riley at USC.
Or even other coaches, even over Oklahoma. You had
Venables, sure.
Venables, right? Bringing staff, getting recruits to flip back over to Oklahoma. So, I mean, good luck with that stuff. So, my calling the shot, USC, like I said, I'm staying by it. I said at the very beginning, Mark, I did 8-4 this year. But going forward, again, I'm old enough to know what USC can do with a capable coach. And a guy that's like 55-10 is more than just a capable coach. So I'm very, very happy the position we're in. The rest of the middle of the SEC, tear it up, guys. SEC, all the way. Yeah, good job. Good job for your conference.
10, he might even be about the 11th best coach in college football.
Possibly. Maybe I'll make it. Maybe next year with a couple key victories, he could get inside of your top 10. I'm waiting for that moment. I'm on pins and needles.
Tim, you're getting a ton of support here. Do you know what this kind of call makes me feel like? Makes me feel like Paul Feinbaum, because if you ever watch Feinbaum, he doesn't rile too many. He just basically sits there and lets other people rant and rave, and the callers go nuts on each other. That's what I feel like here, and that's fine. I enjoy that. I don't have to say anything. You'll
never hear me pop off, Mark. If the Alabama fan says USC sucks, I go, "We sure did. You kicked the shit out of us." Georgia, when they come and say, "But I've seen that Georgia defensive line. I don't want any part of Georgia. You got it. But the rest of you guys, really, you guys are good, but you're not. You aren't the greatest thing that ever happened to college football. It's getting kind of scary." And TBOW was recruiting for USC. That beast out west. So that beast out west was recruiting for USC while at Oklahoma. No, that was another guy. That was actually an assistant. It wasn't the beast out west. It was some other guy that was recruiting at the same time.
Yeah, we're going to take like the last 5 years of the playoff era, for as much as I believe that the SEC is the best conference, and I think it's substantiated and not arguable, conference is far from perfect. I can go through a litany of scores and results on the national stage in which the SEC has gone out there and gotten, handed its lunch. So there are those results out there. There's a lot of those results as well.
Yeah, I just again, normally I'm a little more level-headed. Normally I try to be understanding of people that just don't have the concept of the extent of college football, not just what, again, Paul Feinbaum and what the SEC network told them, that they're part of the SEC, so therefore their team is better than any team in the country. I mean, it gets a bit silly, some of the way some of these people buy in, because it just doesn't play out that way. And I'll be interested. By the way, I'm pretty sure did the Real say that Florida was favored? Did he say that? I thought he did.
The previous caller, Hunter, said that he put some money on Utah. No, he said that Utah was the 2.5 point favorite.
Yeah, because they're like 2 to they are 2.5 favorite. Okay, yeah, because they're 2.5 favorite across the board. And as we know, the only reason why they're only getting 2 is, one, they're Utah, and 2, because no one knows how good that team is, and 2, they don't know who Cam Rising is. I think this is gonna be Cam Rising coming out party for the Heisman Trophy, because I don't think people realize how good that dude actually is. And I mean, I don't know. I don't like the line myself because it's in the swamp.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is if you ask me which team is better, I'm going with Utah. Yeah, I'll tell you Utah is better.
Site game, definitely if it was played in Salt Lake City, but if this was a neutral site game, and the jury's still out on Billy Napier, of course, it's his first game, but that's a difficult task for a first-year head coach trying to build a program, taking on a Utah team that Kyle Whittingham, he's got his process, he's got his program in play, knows exactly what he wants and what he expects out of them, and the whole system's in place at Utah versus what Florida's trying to put together.
Yeah. Again, we'll see how it goes. Sorry for bringing some negative energy in, but I'm just, it's fun to watch the chat. Sometimes it's fun, but at some point it just gets a little bit nauseating when you have these fans that just don't quite understand.
Erica, thank you for the super chat, and Erica and others here. Best caller I've heard in a long time. He is speaking the truth.
Oh, thank you, Erica. Well, go Hawks, because I know she's a big Hawkeye fan. So that'd be interesting. I can't wait. I mean, I can't wait to join the Big Ten, because again, of all the fans I've ever been around, coming to the Coliseum and coming to the Rose Bowl and going away games. I really enjoyed Iowa fans, although I didn't enjoy the game at the Holiday Bowl, but I enjoyed the fans, Iowa fans. And I really, when the Huskers came about 20 years ago, the fans in the Big Ten are just amazing. I can't wait to go to the road games.
Yeah, I don't like to group fan bases or put labels on them, but I think generally fans in the Big Ten are very passionate, but it's measured with realism to a certain extent. And again, I know I'm speaking for a large number of people, and there are always aberrations, but realistic. And have a sense of, okay, this, when it comes right down to it, yeah, we're going to fight to the death, and we're serious about this, but it's not real life. We're not going to hate these other people or hate their their way of life or anything like that. We're good before the kickoff, and after the kickoff we can have fun together and grab a drink together and be good.
Oh yeah, I can't wait for the tailgates again. When I went to the Horseshoe, I was 2009. Nine. I didn't sober up till halftime because of the hospitality of Buckeye fans. I mean, and well knowledgeable fan. Again, that's another thing about the Midwest, and the South, is you guys know your football. I can't say as much when I go to USC tailgates. I'm not gonna lie, but it's always a great experience. So I'm looking forward to it. I just know I'm gonna probably have to mortgage the house, get a second mortgage, but I'm going to all of the away games, especially if it's at the Big House or at the Shoe. I'm going. If it's in Madison, I'm going to go. As long as it's not in like November, I'm going. I'm not going to the Big Ten. I'm sorry, I'm not going to the Big Ten in November. You guys call it football weather. I call it no thanks. That's what I call it. So, but you're all welcome. My tailgate anytime. Anyone on this channel when it gets going. It's not actually my tailgate, but the tailgate I go to, I promise you, we'll have a good time.
Maybe you can turn a camera on yourself. Give us a quick pregame and postgame report you could send me from these stadiums.
Well, I don't know. My pregame ritual is probably not made for MarkRogersTV, but I could probably try to mix something in. Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't know. Yeah, the pregame ritual is pretty wild. It's a fun tailgate, but again, I don't know if it's made for the language or everything is made for MarkRogersTV. But again, it's just so no one twists my words around. Mark, you heard me. I said that the SEC is the best conference top to bottom, but it doesn't mean that anyone past that top three is a guaranteed win or going undefeated in any other and winning any other league. I'm just not too sure about that. And I do think that, and this is a given, that Riley continues his success in college football. If you add USC to the Big Ten East, I'll go up. I'm going to go up with it, especially assuming Michigan is going to be able to continue what they just did, and that, Tucker's bringing Michigan State back. You look at Penn State, Ohio State, USC, Michigan State. Who am I leaving out? Michigan.
Those five.
I mean, it's going to be 5 deep. And again, in any given year, I'd put that up against the SEC West. I would. If, again, there's a big asterisk. If Michigan continues the trajectory it has, if Riley can continue the success he had at Oklahoma, and if Tucker's, who I think he's to be on defense, I'm going to put those 5 up against. Oh, and if Penn State could ever figure out how to get their players to play to the level they should be playing at, then I put it at that level. So,
yeah, Penn State had a 9-3 or 10-2 roster last year that played like garbage a lot of this time. But I can't see the Big Ten putting USC in the East.
No, I don't see it either. I'm just saying if that was the case, I'm just saying that the top, 6-7 teams in the Big Ten, again, along with those assumptions. Also, I'm making an assumption right now. I don't think that the SEC, the top of the SEC is going to continue the stranglehold they have on getting the top talent given NIL. I really think that, we were all worried about NIL and the transfer portal. Remember that about a year ago before the Oklahoma and Texas move? We were worried about that ruining college football. But now we look back in hindsight, that's really not. Yeah, I think that would have balanced. I agree that would have probably balanced itself out. Eventually, it was gonna be different. Just like change. No one loves change, but we could have got comfortable with it. It would have been normal. But what ESPN did and what Fox did, as far as, again, moving these conferences around and realigning them, that's going to be the things no one's going to be comfortable with. And that's going to be the big shakeup in our football that will never be the same. I mean, I don't really think that. I think that NIL was actually, more and more I'm looking at, is actually a good thing, because there are schools, again, like I was stating earlier, that are paying kids to come to their school. There's a big difference. I don't know if you guys all agree, but I certainly stand behind this. Paying someone who's already at your school, I always think it's great. There's stories of kids literally like mooching food off of other students just so they can eat at a lot of schools. They have nothing. Now, the train tables fixed that recently, but for years, these college athletes were screwed over. So paying them, but now that's all on board. And and look at the teams that are talking about they're skirting the rules. Isn't Tennessee, before they had this little problem they had, but weren't they trying to get legislation where the school could actually be involved in NIL? Am I wrong? I mean, I think I remember hearing something about that. They were passing legislation in Tennessee so that their collective could actually communicate with the school, and the school actually be recruiting to the NIL. Is that correct or incorrect?
I thought that the collective, of course, works with the athlete, and that someone communicates to the school that the school is still involved in regards to the accounting and record keeping of those agreements.
Yeah. Anyway. So NIL in the end, I think, is actually be overall good for college football, because there were certain schools that have just had a little agreement amongst each other that we're going to continue to pay, I don't know, a guy a couple $100,000 to win a national championship for us, but it's legal because we got funneled through a church, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that the stuff that was going on, I'm glad that although it won't be exposed, it's now kind of just been whittled away. And you're going to find schools that were traditionally powers that are, people keep talking about the SEC. The thing with the SEC is, to me, it seems like there's always 2 or 3 really good schools at the top, right? So you have Alabama for the better part of 15 years with Saban. That's a whole different ball game. But then you had other schools in the SEC that were recruiting very well, and that would pop up and would have their year or 2 run. But then that would be it. So, but anyway, so just to recap, folks out there, I'll be joining you in the chat in a moment. But unless your name is Alabama or Georgia, which I will say, yeah, I want no part of you guys for at least 3 years, 2 years, right? Unless you're those schools, you guys need to settle down, because either A, your team's crap, or B, you aren't looking as hot as you did when you won the national championship, right? So, come at me, bro. I'm 40, right? We can do this. Let's go. All right, Mark. I know other people probably. I'll catch you later.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Our guy Tim, USC fan, laying it down there, and you can catch Tim and others, whether that's Eric or One Scoop John or Exploring with Ben and Sam, Ronan, a lot of Joey over on Discord. Go to Patreon, search MarkRogersTV on Patreon. Let's bring this up here. There we go. Join our Discord. Talk college football all the time. So what you've got there in the live chat, you can do all the time, 24/7, 365. Plus, you get my picks, plus the picks of all sorts of folks like Steve Dace, Tony Gerdeman, Steve Hellwagon, Wholesome One, and others. Join our Discord and talk college football all the time. Sign up at patreon.com. You get a nice little welcome, just a little hug, little welcome. That's what that is from me. And you get the link to join us on Discord. Let me hit these super chats. First one comes in from Vanity. Thank you so much, Vanity Rose, for that. If Florida wins the narrative, will be the Gators are back. If Florida wins, let's put a comma there. The narrative will be the Gators are back. If they get beat, then it'll be we needed our best for their worst, always an excuse. So obviously not a Florida or SEC fan probably there from Vanity Rose. Yes. I'm going to look more into how the teams play as much as the result. If Florida gets stampeded 38-14, then I'm going to think, got a lot of work to do. If they hang with Utah, of course, if they win, but that home field advantage is significant there. And I'm not a huge believer in his, to the degree that a lot of people are, in a home field advantage. But the Swamp, week 1, that's a good setting for Florida. If they were going out to Salt Lake City for week 1 against an established Kyle Whittingham team and program versus Billy Napier first game, trying to get it all together, that would be rough. But that's going to be a tight game, I believe. Benjamin, in regards to realignment, why doesn't Phil Knight construct a super conference by braiding the Pac-12, the Big 12, and the ACC and nullify the grant of rights? Well, you would need to talk to Phil Knight about that. I'm sure that he has other objectives in life, and I know that he can, roll up and throw to the side, wrinkled $100 bills. I get that he's got so much money, he doesn't know what to do with it, but guys that have that much money aren't in the business typically of throwing it away. So that's the misnomer. We think that extremely, extremely wealthy to the top of the totem pole, rich people just love throwing their money away. They don't. That's how they got one of the reasons they got to be that wealthy. They don't throw their money away. We think they throw their money away. Oh, if you got billions, you throw it away. No, that's not how they got to be billionaires. So he probably has no interest in constructing a super conference and dealing with a bunch of schools that he has no interest in. He wants Oregon to land in the best position for Oregon. All right, let's take these last 2 calls here at the Voice of College Football. Got J-Dub on the line.
Mark, how are we doing this afternoon?
I'm doing well. How's it going?
Well, it's going pretty good. Just yesterday afternoon, I needed some landscaping things for my little project I'm doing in my backyard, and I knew where I wanted to go to get them, and I shopped around a little bit, and I managed to make an online purchase, and I've never felt so fulfilled in my life because I purchased through the Mark Rogers link on Amazon and felt like a real American. I've never been so proud. And gang, you can do it too. And you know what? It didn't cost me $1. And I thought, wow, boy, I can't wait to tell Mark. I thought of him when I went and got those bricks ordered.
Well, thank you. And, on one hand, it seems like, okay, well, it didn't cost you anything and the link's the same and all that other business. So it shouldn't be a big deal. But it is a big deal because you had it in your brain. You've got a zillion things to worry about and deal with, and you had your landscaping project. So you could easily forget about that and not even be concerned with it. So I would totally understand that. But you had it on your mind and you thought it out beforehand. Okay, I'm going to have this link. I'm going to be able to find it. And you went through with that. So I appreciate that.
And everybody else in the chat can feel the same way. So please do. And you know what? Just go ahead while we're sitting here. When you're complaining about what Tim thought or about ready to complain about what I said, hit the mash the thumbs up button. Tim had the Wawa rag out today, and that's okay. I love Tim. I love his calls, and I get where he's coming from. Sometimes I get a little worked up too. I'm not one of these, and I am the Bama caller that he doesn't want to hear from. I am the Bama alumni and bleed the crimson, but I am not and never have been one of these SEC homers. I want the whole rest of the conference to burn and crash and crumble into ash. I don't give a rat's behind what kind of success LSU has. I can't think. I would root for almost any, maybe not Al Qaeda, but I'd root for almost anybody in the world over Auburn. I don't want Tennessee to win in tiddlywinks. I don't want Florida to beat a kindergartner in checkers. I want them all to burn and suffer. So I'm not somebody that's going around bragging on the SEC. The only thing that I appreciate is when the league does play well, then it makes what Alabama achieves look better because they're not beating TCU and Kansas and Colorado State and Washington State and Arizona State. They're beating quality teams. So it's kind of a dichotomy. I want the competition to be good, and I think it is. And I think the SEC, by the way, 6 different national champions in the last 25 years, Pac-12 won. So there's you want to talk about balance? How about that? so it's kind of a dichotomy. You know, I'll never ever root for the SEC to win, and when the SEC play these other SEC teams playing their bowl games, we're like, well, don't you want them to have a great head-to-head record? Well, yes, I do, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to actually root for them. I still don't want them to win. If they do, it makes my case look better. But if you think I'm going to sit there and go, oh boy, I sure hope Ole Miss beats Baylor. No, I want Ole Miss to lose by 30. You know, it's so I'm not one of these SEC apologists, but I do think that, come on, top to bottom. I mean, come on. And you did an exhaustive research project a couple months ago comparing the bowl records, because the SEC teams a lot of times are playing in better bowls against better competition, and it just shows up. And it shows up in the NFL draft. I mean, clearly the guys who are responsible for spending tens of millions of dollars are not haunting the halls and the practice fields in the Pac-12 like they are the SEC. They're just not.
It's all true. Yeah, the structure of the bowls, ever since the BCS started in particular, but the BCS through the New Year's Six, is that obviously if you have more teams, if first of all in the BCS championship game, if you had a team from your conference in the BCS championship game, then you had more teams selected in the BCS bowls. Number one, because the teams in the SEC and to a lesser degree the Big Ten are the best teams, so they're going to get selected more. Plus, they draw better TV ratings, so those bowls wanted them. All you have to go through and see that on a regular basis through the BCS and now playoff era, that more teams from those two conferences get selected into those bowls, and it brings up. So then you've got the 8th place team in the SEC having to play a 4th or 5th place team from another conference in bowl games, and the bowl seedings are way off throughout the rest of the bowl structure for the SEC and the Big Ten.
Yeah, I want to, I don't know, I kind of want to go away a little bit, if we could, from the conference versus conference argument, and just once again reiterate my hope that we can do a rose, orange, sugar, cotton, fiesta, and peach. Get 12 teams playing in the bowls, and out of those, take the 2 winners and play a one-off for the national championship. And I would, that gives you a 12-team quote unquote playoff, without necessarily having it a playoff. It's the big 6 bowls. It keeps some of the conference affiliations. Now, this would be a lot sweeter if the Oklahoma, Texas, USC, UCLA moves hadn't happened, and the conferences had been, what they were, 3 years ago. That, then the case I'm making would have made a lot more sense. It would have been a lot more lovely to look at. But still, I think I'm interested in preserving the integrity of at least the bigger bowls. And then somebody will say, well, what happens if you've got 3 teams that are really clearly the best? How often does that happen? It's usually not. It's usually pretty clear who the top 2 are. And if that creates a little argument, well, a little argument's good for the sport. What do you think we're doing? What do you think we're all doing here?
Well, here you go, J-Dub. I just happen to have the right notepad right here. I've yet to produce this video because all this realignment mess started. But if you just, let's say last year, you would have had, in a traditional setup, you would have had Michigan and Utah in the Rose Bowl. You would have had Alabama in the Sugar Bowl as the SEC champion. And you would have had Pitt in the Orange Bowl as the ACC champion. And the Fiesta, you would have had Baylor as the Big 12 champion. And then I just took the other top 7 teams in the country and slotted them based on their seeding, based on their ranking. And you come up with an Alabama-Michigan State Sugar Bowl, and you've got a Pitt-Notre Dame Orange Bowl, and you've got a Baylor-Ole Miss Fiesta Bowl. You've got a Georgia-Oklahoma State Peach Bowl, and you've got a Ohio State-Cincinnati Cotton Bowl. And there's your New Year's Six last year.
Yeah, and can you think of anybody? I can't think of any. Certainly nobody who's listening to what you just said would have thought that would have been a bad slate of games to watch.
Heck no.
You know, how entertaining would that have been? Now, would we have gotten to the end of the day? And guess what? Alabama and Georgia were clearly the two best teams out of those 12. Probably. They were the two best teams by, I thought, a wide margin last year. Yeah. And so you would have had those two teams play somewhere in a rotating site for a national championship game. And wouldn't it be wonderful if these bowls and the national champion, the bowls could have, ABC always broadcast the orange or the sugar and the rose, and NBC always had the Orange Bowl, and Cotton Bowl was always on. You could still have your network affiliations. Fox could get this bowl, ESPN, but then do like the NFL does and sell that playoff game, that +1. Hey, this year it's Fox. Next year it's NBC. Next year it's CBS. So no one gets a control over it. It's going to switch networks every year, and that way we're not stuck listening to Joe Buck or it moves around a little bit, but wishful thinking. I know other people are lined up.
So I love that, J-Dub. I've only got one question for you. So I love that, and obviously I had already worked out. I went back all the way to like 2015.
Wow.
Okay. And what that would have looked like every year. My only question to you is, how do you select those two teams? I know that you're telling me it's pretty obvious who the two teams are, but you do have to have a formal process of two teams get selected.
And that's the ghost, isn't it? Because somebody's got to be those selectors. Do you do the Cigarin computer rankings? Do you do a BCS type formula? And just say, you know what, the chemistry will figure it all out? Or do you want, you're going to love this. Do you want that committee room of 13 sitting around and letting them make the decision? Somebody is going to have to make the call, or some agreed upon route to that is going to have to be in place. I would kind of prefer that they do almost a BCS style, and let that way the team's own numbers can work themselves out for themselves.
Yeah. And under that scenario, there's also a possibility that a team could lose one of these bowl games and still make the national championship game. It's not likely, but if a team was super dominant like Georgia last year, and let's say Georgia would have beaten Alabama in the SEC championship game, and then they go and lose the Sugar Bowl, that they're still one of the top two. I don't know how I feel about that. I almost feel like this should be a playoff of sorts, that you have to win your major bowl game to get to the championship game.
The conferences could make that a codicil. They could make that a part of the agreement. If you agree to play in one of these games, regardless of the outcome, regardless of the situation, how it develops, you cannot play in the +1 if you lose. They could make that a codicil, and just take care of it right there, saying, if you agree to play in the Fiesta Bowl, I don't care what happens elsewhere or what happens here. If you don't win it, you're not capable of advancing. You could do that. You can make that restriction. This would also keep alive, although I'm not thinking of it for this purpose, but I'm just thinking that doing a situation like you have on your paper there in front of you does keep an independent Notre Dame in the equation, because you're not freezing them out by saying you've got to be a conference champion or runner-up or whatever the case may be. And it might not be the case where it's just the runner-up. Let's say you have a 2020 where a lot of people were arguing, A&M was number 5, even though Bama beat them by 4 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. They were the number 5 team in 2020.
Sure.
Under the bowl situation, you've got the SEC champion, the SEC runner-up, which was Florida, and then one of your other at-larges is going to be A&M in that situation. So it's not going to necessarily be the 1 and 2. It could be 1, 2, and your number 3 if your number 3 is worthy.
Oh, sure. When you've got 6 bowl games with 12 teams, there's going to be, especially with the SEC, but also the Big Ten, as I go through this, going to be seasons where they have 3 teams in. Absolutely. Nothing wrong with that.
You had Ohio State and Cincy playing in Dallas. Is that right?
I did.
Tell me that wouldn't be a packed house.
Yeah,
Tell
that
me
would have been
that.
a fun
Tell
one.
me, tell me the whole nation wouldn't have been tuned into that. You know.
Yeah.
You know what? Maybe you know the problem is that the people in this room right here, the people on this stream, we're just making entirely too much sense, and
That's the problem.
and it's just the people sitting in the boardroom somewhere with the abacus in front of them and all the beans, and they're counting the nickels and the dimes. They're like, well, but what about, but what about, but what about, and they can't see the forest for the trees.
It's not 2 + 2, and it's not checkers. It's a little more complicated than that, but it's also not rocket science. It's not difficult. It takes some organization, some thought, a little planning, but it's not that difficult. It's pretty simple.
And it keeps, God, I'm going to say this until I'm blue in the face. I apologize to the chat if you're sick of hearing me say this, but it keeps the uniqueness of it. What makes college football different from the NFL is helped and preserved by the Mark Rogers notebook playoff situation that you got written down there. It preserves the uniqueness of college football, which is, I think, a big part of why all of us love the game so much. That we might all like the NFL as well, but we know Saturday is not Sunday. And some of the unique things that make us all love Saturday so much is preserved by doing the 6+1.
Absolutely. And so for those people that just love college football, they just love college football and say, screw the NFL. But then there are some of us that love college football and love the NFL both, but that doesn't mean they're the same, or you have to make them
Right.
the same.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I mean, I'm watching football both days. I'm watching the same sport, but I feel like I certainly feel like I'm watching the same sport, but I'm watching two games. I'm watching an entirely different iteration of the sport. You know, this is how they do it on this level. This is how they do it on the other level. And I have been to NFL games, and I've spent 30 years at college stadiums, and the atmosphere is completely different. The fans are completely different. The experiences, and I don't care what you pick your stadium. I don't care what stadium you want to pick. You pick Stanford, pick North Carolina State, whatever. That experience is going to be different than going to Arrowhead or going to Invesco Field or wherever. It's just a different experience, and it's one of the unique things about the sport. Well, hey, I'm out of the way, gang. The Amazon link, the thumbs up button, the thanks mark. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, J-Dub. And before we get to our final caller, and I apologize to Mike 3883, maybe he was on the line too long and dropped off, but we got Joe on the line standing by. Erica, thank you so much for your contributions today. Erica makes a unique request that everybody gently push the like button. Maybe it's less reps on that like button. It doesn't wear out quite as quickly that way, but gently push the like button and go Hawks. That would not be the Atlanta Hawks either. All right. Joe, how you doing today?
Hello. Can you hear me?
I got you. How are you?
Good, good. I really do appreciate your show very much.
Thank you.
This is like one of the best things on the YouTube, I think, because I'm a college football fan from way back. And you kind of make that fun for the old guys that remember all the stuff, even if you don't.
Oh, I do. I bring up a lot from the past. Yes, I do. I could start a college football history channel.
Well, there you go. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I know everything, but I do know Notre Dame football, and I wind up getting annoyed with people that, sit there and talk about Notre Dame needs to join a conference. Well, I'd like to see that happen. However, look at their history. They have never, and since like 1900, been part of a conference. It's like, you guys all started getting paid before Notre Dame did with NBC when CBS would, carry whatever games and ABC would carry whatever games. Then ESPN got into it. So, it's like, so the last 20 years, I guess, or maybe 25, I guess, NBC had a contract that Notre Dame finally started getting paid for being not in a conference, but to be on TV. So to me, it's like, I'm hoping that they do join the Big Ten because of all the good rivalries, especially USC coming over there and the Purdue's, and Ohio State would be like almost like Notre Dame, Miami, the way it'll jump up, in intensity, just like Miami, Notre Dame did, over a short period of time. I think that's what I see with Ohio State and Notre Dame happening if Notre Dame ever gets there. But that's mostly the kind of things that I wanted to bring to the attention of people of why they don't join a conference. I think they're going to honor their contract. It goes until like 24 or 25 with NBC. I'm hoping it's only until 24. And then I think they're going to look around and see what has happened in the meantime with all this shuffling. And maybe it'll be settled by then a little bit. And hopefully Notre Dame will be able to make a decision to finally join a conference. And I think it's high time they do. And I think a lot of Notre Dame fans would love to see that. And I think they'd mostly like to see the Big Ten as the conference to join, So those are kind of my comments.
Yeah, I'm a football guy, so I'm not going to speak to the academics, even though that falls into play with either the ACC or the Big Ten. And I'm not going to speak to the money, even though I think that the matchups are so much more intriguing in the Big Ten rather than Notre Dame playing the 5 or 6 games that they've been playing over the last few years. That has been more Georgia Tech and Duke and Syracuse than it has been Clemson or Miami or Florida State. So I think it's more intriguing. And obviously all of us can read a map and look at a map and see what geographically makes sense. And just if you have any if you're intuitive at all into what has made the sport great and what the feel is of the sport, Notre Dame just feels right in the Big Ten. The brand, the tradition, just the
rivalries that they carry.
Michigan State, Purdue, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping that that's going to be what it comes down to, because it's just a natural fit. This ACC stuff. But another point I would make too is that I don't like what everyone at Notre Dame, they're such homers. They sit there and love Jack Swarbrick, their AD, because he's done, so much for, I guess, all sports. But I like football. I don't give a crap about really the other sports so much. Mm-hmm. And so to watch him, and we schedule teams early on in the season that, like these Georgia teams that we played a couple of games, 1-1s, and now, maybe coming up we'll have another couple of big teams, but we always, like Ohio State, but we always play them early in the season. And if we ever, since we don't belong to a conference right now, why not Jack Swarbrick get Notre Dame to play these teams later in the season? Now they're afraid of that because I think Notre Dame gets a lot better as the year goes on, and I think that it makes their season-ending conference team games that much more challenging for them. But really, that's the only hope that Notre Dame has. Like, there's one guy in the chat that said something about Notre Dame will go 10-1 and they won't make the playoffs. And I agree with that, because Notre Dame, for them to get in as it stands now, they have to be undefeated, because they sit at home and possibly after a Stanford game to finish their season. USC would be good to finish their season with every year, but USC won't come there in the cold weather. So, it's like they have to do what they can with the teams they can get, and they don't get to play the good ones until the end of the season. Now, their recent history with Brian Kelly, they'd get their asses kicked anyway. So, that's the bummer part of having Notre Dame to play a good team at the end of the season. But I would take my chances, and especially with what they've been doing lately and how they're recruiting and coming on, I think that we're going to see a much more return to the old days of, and I say old, I remember Notre Dame, Michigan State 6-6 tie, you know what I mean? But, I've, gone through Joe Theismann, Joe Montana, Terry Hanratty, I mean, like, I'm talking about a lot of history with this team.
Okay. So you're going back to the famous 1966
right
game, 10-10. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 10-10.
Yeah. So I don't go quite that far back, but I think that I'm going to defend Swarbrick from the scheduling standpoint this way. And I don't know this to be true, but I'm making a bit of a logical guess that these conferences go into silos after about week 3 and play themselves, and there are very few opportunities to play outside. Therefore, Notre Dame has trouble scheduling, and I'd have to go back prior to the ACC contract to see what those Notre Dame schedules look like past, the last week of September. But that ACC contract may have remedied a lot of those issues.
Well, it's just such a silly thing. Why did Jack say to commit to 5 games or 6 games, whatever it is, with the ACC, and then not play in a championship? I mean, where is the benefit to Notre Dame to do that? I don't get it. And they're not even a strong conference right now because Florida State's down and Miami's down. It's really basically Clemson and a basketball program of North Carolina that's really carrying the league. So I don't see where we did well by committing to 5 games or 6 games with that conference. I mean, in football, come on, it should be the Big Ten. That's it.
I am right there with you. Well, Joe, you anything else for us?
No, I'm just really a big time fan of yours, and I love what this chat. It's pretty much people keeping their heads. And you can get crazy with college football, but it's a good group of people that are in here, and I tend to go to everywhere you're showing, whether it's West Virginia or wherever you got shows going. I like to sit in and listen. It's a great thing,
Joe.
It's a great thing you do.
Thank you so much for that. You have a great day. Thanks for calling.
You bet. Thank you.
All right. It's nice to get a little support, a little pat on the back at the end of the day. Very nice. Not the end of my day, but the end of the day right here. This is our one live scheduled show for the day. We've got a big Tuesday lined up with USC at 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific. Yes, Tim, that's 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific. Tim hates to hear that. Maybe we'll look for a different time for USC football. But for right now, our Trojans Live is at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern on Tuesday. Then Iowa Live at 5:30 Eastern, Nebraska Live at 7. And, scheduling note would be we've got an additional live stream on tomorrow, Tuesday, Texas A&M. So we are committed to providing as many fall camp kickoffs. So fall camp kicks off around August 5th for everyone, right around that August 5th date for just about everybody, because that always is determined based on NCAA guidelines of how many practices can be participated in prior to the first game of the season. So they kind of count back the days, and this season it's roughly August 5th. For some teams, it's the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, in that range. So right around that time, sometime starting actually tomorrow, Tuesday, we are going to do fall camp live previews. So you can join us live. We're starting with Texas A&M Tuesday, noon Eastern, right here and on the Texas A&M channel. We'll be prompting everyone to go on over there and subscribe. But we will be here live at noon tomorrow, noon Eastern time on Tuesday, to talk Texas A&M football live with our guy Andrew Hattersley from Gig'em 247 Sports. So join us then. And then we've got our regular rundown lineup of USC, Iowa, and Nebraska on Tuesday. We also have already scheduled out Notre Dame, Clemson, and LSU fall camp preview live streams as well. I better get cracking on predictions and previews. I got to admit, you know what? One thing that has held me back, besides moving, which has been chaotic, but that comes with the territory, I understand. And I've run into a lot of issues that I consider to be difficulties or issues that nobody else, everybody faces difficulties with moving. So, but I made the bad move without thinking of really locking in all my preview editions with Athlons and Phil Steele, my Phil Steele publication. They're all boxed up and locked away. And I've yet to get the truck here. So I don't have any of those materials. I can still obviously do all my research online, but it was just so much easier when I had my Athlons and my Phil Steele publications that I don't have. So that's been difficult. And I know I got to get on these previews. People are requesting those. Previews and predictions. Understand it's against my grain to release predictions this early because I always produce them right before the season. But from a business standpoint, I should have been putting predictions out there weeks ago so that the videos can sit on the shelf the entire summer and people can watch them. But that's kind of against my grain. Sometimes what I've done in most previous years is I've had a big preseason preview show and unveiled all my predictions live the night before the season. But then they're stale, they're old, they're done. Nobody cares the next day because football's on the air. So I think I'll release team-by-team predictions coming out soon. All right. Anything else you'd like to see? Certainly, you can always hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail if you've got any specific requests for videos. Otherwise, we will see you Tuesday at noon Eastern, Texas A&M live right here.